Yeah!
It's Josh Williams here with another bonus episode of the One Man Podcast. I have a wonderful guest here today, guys. He's a world touring comedian. He's the host of the Puck Off Podcast. He's opened for Bill Burr, Lisa Lampanelli. He shared the stage with Dave Chappelle, Robin Williams. He's performed live at Gotham. He's roasted Tommy Lee. He's performed in the NFL pregame show on Fox. But the most important thing is we're lucky enough to have him here now. Joe Bartnick is my guest today. Thanks for coming, buddy.
Oh, what's up, Josh? Thanks for having me. It's a nice place here.
Thanks.
Can't wait to hit the massage chairs. And they're actually the chairs you plug in, not some Asian lady waiting for you.
That's so funny. I would be more impressed with that, though, if we just had actual human hands.
Oh, absolutely. Well, then we would be starting the podcast about 30 minutes later.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, Casa de Absolute Comedy is equipped with 2 massage chairs. So we're basically like the front of a Good Life or a gym where they've got the massage chairs in the front.
Yeah, you're like a spa. Where's the hot tub and the cool bath?
Absolutely. There's hot towels coming at the end of the podcast.
I get a shave.
Yeah, so welcome. I've been mentioning to everybody just to get started with is that you're performing here. You're headlining all week at Absolute Comedy in Ottawa.
Yeah, it's the first 2 shows have been fun, man. Great club, great people. It's been the whole tour, the Absolute Empire has been a blast.
Nice.
You know,
I'm glad you're enjoying it. I was going to plug the date again later in the show, but I'm like, you know what? If you guys are just listening, the most important thing is come see Joe while you still have a chance here in Ottawa the rest of the week. You know, you guys are going to hear this on Friday, so there's 2 shows Friday night, 2 shows Saturday night, a show on Sunday, and a last chance opportunity to see him Monday night at the Tartan Pub in Orleans. So just get that quick little plug out, guys. Go to absolutecomedy.ca and you can get tickets for that. If you're listening to this 3 months later, well, then just disregard this. Fuck off. You're late to the party and you have to live with that. So I guess just to be able to start for the listeners is I kind of wanted to ask, because a lot of people, we all don't know how my guests sort of got into comedy. Like, you're a monster comedian now, but I kind of like to share with a lot of people sort of what was your beginnings and stuff? Like, what made you want to start stand-up, and how did you get into it?
Yeah, I always just wanted to do I've always wanted to be a stand-up comedian. I just thought it was just the greatest job. I think I'm from the generation where Johnny Carson was on every night, and then you saw the comics come on. You're like, wow, that'd be fun to do, and you want to be Johnny. And then I think my biggest influences were Eddie Murphy. Delirious when he came out in the red leather and just crushed. That's when like everyone was watching the same 3 things on television, right? In America. And I'm not trying to be America versus Canada, because I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, we had all those shades.
Yeah. So I really think like 80 to 90% of my generation of comics within my 5-year time span, and then in like my buddy Paul Verzi's, his generation, he's like 7 years younger, they're into the Eddie Murphy when he wore the blue suit Raw.
Right. But it's almost like how you generalize what color suit was Eddie Murphy.
Right. But he'd already been out there though then. So for us red suit guys, it was like when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan.
Right.
Where like all of a sudden everyone in America picked up a guitar and wanted to be in a rock band.
Right.
Like every bad kid like me, when they wanted attention, wanted to be Eddie Murphy.
That's one of the best analogies I've heard too, because I've never heard, but you're absolutely right. That's a lot of people have tried to personify the whole Eddie Murphy influence, but that's a perfect one with the Beatles on Ed Sullivan.
Well, thank you. Well, because everyone else before that, everyone's wearing a sport coat or a tie, and they want to impress Johnny.
Right.
And they're clean, and Eddie was none of that.
Yeah.
He followed the bus boys and came out in their red suit and just threw fire. Yeah. For an hour, and everyone at the bus on Monday was just like knew the bits, and it was over. It was Eddie Murphy mania, and then you have the 48 Hours and Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood, and
right.
It's Eddie Murphy. Whatever. I mean, he's still the most talented human being I think of our lifetime.
Yeah.
As far as in my opinion, I'm not getting that debate, but I say, well, and if it's your show, you can move into that if you want. But
no, dude. I think
my
that's
linear of like what I got into. So then, David. Then the original Letterman, the late night with David Letterman,
right,
was just mind blowing for like a kid like in 12, 13, 14, just stay up and watch it and be like tired at school. And
yeah,
it was just the most like everyone today now, including when Letterman was on CBS, including Letterman, was just doing a bad Letterman imitation, in my opinion.
Right.
I mean, I love Jimmy Fallon. I love Kimmel. But it's not Conan. But it's just not. No one did that before.
Right. I remember another comic. I mean, I couldn't even remember who it was, but they were saying the same thing: is just staying up late at night and listening to the top tens and everything like that. Yeah,
and just how he would just. Oh, could we swear on this podcast?
Dude, anything you want.
Oh,
yeah, I don't hold anything back.
Oh no, and just shit on famous people.
Yeah,
to their face.
Yeah,
like no one did that, you know. So I mean, that's what Stern picked up on that,
right?
You know, but and then I grew up like 2 subway stops away from Dennis Miller.
Wow.
So Dennis was already Dennis. So then him on Saturday Night Live doing the news, that was just like, well, that's what I wanted to do. This the jokes, and he's and his Pittsburgh sensibilities of being like East Coast, but a little bit less dicky.
Right.
You know, I'm like, Pittsburghers are Pittsburghers. Like we all get along the best. As soon as you meet a Pittsburgher, you just you know the guy. But you know, and then like Rodney Dangerfield was like another just stand up. And then I always wanted to do it. And then so in those days in Pittsburgh, like there's no comedy scene. There was no comedy scene. There was like a couple guys, Jimmy Crenn did comedy, a couple other people that were great, and they ended up being radio stars. And then so I'm just like, I want to move to San Francisco and do it, because that's when San Francisco was like a hotbed of comedy.
Okay. Because I was going to ask you why San Francisco, because I read that that's where you started.
I just wanted to move there from how much the city was a great city, and I knew there was just a huge comedy community, and it was just where I wanted to start. I live in LA now. I'm still an LA person. So, you know, and then I got there, went there, just, you know, fumbled around for a few more years. And, but I always wanted to do it, and just said, F it. I got a job at the Punchline, working the door. And, that was it. And
That's
then
awesome.
I got it. And then they never let anyone who worked at the Punchline be comics. I was like, you can't be a comic.
Really?
Yeah. And I was the first one to break through. And so they made me work the hardest to be one, but it made me a better comic. And then because the people who, like Jeff Wills, who's now the king of Live Nation, books like Chappelle, Burr, all around the world. Like, booked the first like George Lopez tour, like invented arena comedy.
Right.
Like, you know, he was,
which is no small feat, for God's sake. To fill an arena with human beings to see a spoken word performance.
Yeah. So he was brilliant, and he's a great guy. And long story short, though, it was right when comedy was just starting to come back, and the Punchline was one of the destination A rooms in the country. Okay. So I got to open for Dave Attell, Louis Black, Dave Chappelle, Louis C.K.
That's unreal.
George Lopez. That's how I know all these guys. And it's just like I just got a master's degree in comedy,
right?
Where you would think I'd be further along in my career, but just, you know, so that's where like I got to meet like Dave Attell, and Attell is my hero. He's the king. Even Burr calls him like he's the king. Like
I like him a lot.
Ian Bagg has the best line ever. Canadian. Ian Bagg says, "If Dave Attell's not your favorite comic, I can't be your friend."
Well, I can't say he's my favorite, but I admire the shit out of him.
Well, you might be a little younger generation, but like generational wise, but he's the comics comic. Like
I've also only been able to see him on TV or on CD, right? So we know that seeing someone live is so I haven't had that experience.
And I'm not trying to be like, you can't be my friend.
Of course.
But it's just he's that. So just seeing him he'd be like there like 4 times a year for weeks. That was the thing. They just booked it so like all the best people came back like 3-4 times a year. So it's just like Mitch Hedberg, I became great friends. So Geraldo, everybody, all the best of the best of the New York guys that would come out.
Right.
And that's how I kind of got my style, and that's just kind of how. And I just doing 10 to 12 shows a week, busting my ass to work up from doing laundromats, open mics, and that's when you have to wait a year to get on stage at the Punchline.
Right.
And then you get on, and then you host for a while, then you feature for a while, and then you start people taking you on the road, and then you get. That's how I met Lampanelli. Wills goes, "Hey, this lady was just on this roast. She's going to be huge.
Right.
You should go work with her in Sacramento." I'm
yeah.
Like, okay. I never did this ever. I'm like, here's a couple tags. I just never did that.
Right.
And you go, I'll try him out, Bartnick. By the end of the weekend, she's buying me dinner. She's like, "You're on my team." Like she was closing with it. Like they were all killing. And then
that's awesome.
That's how I started writing roasts with her, and then being her writer on a lot of projects. And then she took me on the road with her for pretty much 7 years.
That's awesome.
First couple of years, I did all of the gigs, and then less and less, and then she's moving people in and stuff. But that was her moving up to the peak. So I was only staying I was only theaters and 5-star hotels.
Well, dude, that's
the best
great.
of the best.
And so many people just see it as like a quick thing. They're like, I mean, like here in Canada, when I was a kid, like we were talking about staying, as a kid watching late night TV, I watched, like the old Evening and the Improv and things like that. And I would see guys like Russell Peters on late night comedy shows like that when I was a kid. And so like 10 years ago, maybe a little under 10 years ago, when Russell really blew up, and all these people are like, hey, have you heard of this new guy? It's like, he's not new.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Okay, Dunham is a perfect example too. Like Jeff Dunham got big a few years ago, you know what I mean? Not too long in the last decade.
Yeah.
But I saw him perform with Just Peanut and Walter on the old Super Dave Osborne variety show. Like he was on that show.
I was just showing a kid, the kid that does the impressions last night. He didn't know who Super Dave Osborne was.
Are you serious?
And I was just like, you gotta YouTube it. I mean, so when I got home last night, I watched like 3 of them because I had Googled him, like to show him who he was, and then like
they're great. They're
it's
fucking great. And then he had the cartoon afterwards, which was hysterical.
Oh, he's Bob Einstein, just one of the fun. He's Funkhauser on Curb Your Enthusiasm, if people are wondering.
Okay.
And he's also Albert Brooks' brother.
Oh, is he? Yeah, that guy is absolutely. His voice is hysterical.
Oh yeah.
Like, I have nothing but good things to say about Super Dave Osborne.
He's fantastic. It's people have been around and they blow up. I opened for Louis C.K. at the Punchline in Sacramento when he was like, making Pootie Tang, or when he was kind of post Chris Rock, kind of pre PBS or HBO first show debacle, where he was just doing stand up around.
Yeah.
Just it had enough credits to headline, but it was just brilliant. But no one heard of him,
Yeah. Well, there's so many great acts and guys that because I mean, again, something that talking to different comics and whatnot, I mean, everybody hears how much work is involved in the industry. Like, you can't, it is so far from just being funny.
Yes.
You have to work so hard. And I wanted to ask you, just going back to the punchline that you were saying about, was you had said that if you worked there, you couldn't do stand up. Now, do you mean that was like a policy of theirs? Or was it just that, like, no, if you're working there, there's no way you're going to be able to do stand-up?
It was kind of their policy. I mean, obviously it wasn't the most ironclad thing in the world because I showed the desire. They just didn't want, as opposed to like the Comedy Store, and it seems like the Absolutes, where some places they want the comics to be around.
Right.
This was more like they just wanted people to work there. Because in those days, it was owned by Bill Graham Presents.
Okay.
It was the Bill Graham.
Right.
So the benefit of that was I also got to work at the Warfield and the Fillmore. So I saw a million musical acts.
Wow. Those are like, those are iconic places.
Yeah. So, so it's like, it was just kind of like, they just, it was, I don't know whose policy it was, and it didn't, I broke through it. So it just kind of made me better. The easier it is for you at the beginning, the worse it is in the long run for you in comedy.
Right. Because you felt that huge rise and then it sort of,
if anything, it's kind of, everyone's career goes peaks and valleys and ups and downs. But I, if anything, I had it not easy in San Francisco per se. I had it easier, and I lucked into just having some good guest sets and having some people take me on the road and stuff. Where I worked a lot, not early, but medium early in my career, where I worked a lot on word of mouth and like right place, right time kind of thing. Where then when you realize, oh, I got to start hustling again.
Right.
You fall into hustling when people are calling you.
Right.
And then when people stop calling just due to just momentum, then you go, oh man, I got to hustle it up again. Because I always call stand up the running game. It's always like if I'm on this show or that show or pitching this or doing that or any of my hockey things, it's always like when no matter anything else fails, I can always just get on stage and then I feel like I'm at home.
Yeah.
It's like running the ball in football. Like, oh, this ain't working, run the ball.
Yeah. And do you feel, this is something for me that like, I don't feel more like myself than when I'm on stage. As much as it's like a more accentuated version of when I'm off stage, I really feel the most comfortable.
Well, that's a great thing to be because like my wife would always say way back in the day when we were just dating and everything, she goes, you need to be the way you are in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I am on stage. It's a little nicer version of me.
Right.
But even now I almost feel like I'm nicer. I feel like it's really close to just me. Because I'm almost so used to being on stage now forever that I'm not really I'm not a public person when I'm not a public person.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Like I try not to be the life of the party. Yeah. Because I already am.
I used to be that way, not necessarily trying to be the life of the party, but definitely trying to be like positive, outgoing, entertaining.
Right.
But then once you do stand up, like I guess that if it's a need or whatever it is met. I'm on stage so much that I want to get off stage, go home, put my feet up, read a book, or watch TV. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want that expectation. I find now that I'm a comic, now when I'm in social situations, people expect it of me. Whereas before they didn't like it. You know what I mean? I don't mean that they hated it, but I'd have friends that would have to like prep people before we got together. Like my buddy Josh is a little outspoken. You know what I mean? And now they can go, oh, he's a comic. He's a comic. He's outspoken. He's a little rough around the edge, a little blunt sometimes. But you know what I mean? But now that he's a comedian, like they get a fucking blanket sweep of explanation.
Blunt's a funny thing because like I was never be allowed to go to my wife's Christmas parties or anything because I'm not office material.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or any material for work. But no, absolutely no. Well, even like last night, a fun show. And then the fans were cool. And then one of the guys is a magician, and he was like doing some tricks. And then he was like, wanted to get me involved. It's like, no, dude, I just want to watch you do the tricks.
Right.
Like have somebody else pick the cards out. Like
I'm
not on stage. I have a stage. When I'm not on stage, I don't need to be on stage anymore.
Yeah.
I'd much rather give the floor to other people.
Right.
And let them do their thing and let them talk. Like I'm talked out, kind of.
Yeah. And I'm as I'm getting older too, like I want to hear other people. I want to learn from someone else. I'd rather listen to someone else's point of view or something like that, if that makes any sense.
Well, interesting people.
Yes.
Like like you meet a guy like, oh, I do the brakes on roller coasters. Like, oh wow, let me hear about that. Or this guy's in the Navy. Let's hear about that. Or this guy does that. Or this woman does this. But when it's just like, it's always the weirdest thing on the road is you kind of give everybody like I like everyone for like 4 minutes. Like.
I like that. You're like America's Got Talent, basically. You're just going like, you got 4 minutes to impress me, and I'm giving you the buzzer, or I'm going to let you go forward. You get to move on to the next show. Well,
this may sound dicky, but it's kind of like, okay, when they're talking to me, like I'll be a good person, and like, yeah, cool.
Right.
Like, this is what I do, yeah, and then ask me a question or two. But then it kind of like, for a lot of people, it turns to then they want you to be interested in them.
Right. And some people doing that thing where they're just waiting for their turn to talk too. Like they ask you so that you'll ask them.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just don't care.
Yeah.
I can't take an interest in everyone that comes over and says hello. I not to be a jerk, but I generally like people, and I like saying, hey, I'm just not a small talk guy.
Right. No, there's got to be a purpose for the conversation.
Yes,
I get that.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. And it does suck because there's like, you want everyone to know that you're happy and you're grateful they came and thanks so much.
Exactly.
All
That's
that
what I mean. It's like a very much like, hey, cool,
Yeah.
man. Like, oh yeah, great. Thanks for coming. And man. And
so how long are you in town for? And you fly in or like all that shit that doesn't.
And we do that and we talk some hockey. And then it's like, okay, like I'm just kind of like, we're not going to be best friends.
Right.
You know?
And at the same time, there's other people who want to say hello and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Too.
But by no means at all am I ungrateful for anyone that wants to come see a show, my show or anybody else's show in comedy. I think it's fantastic and thank you. I'm just kind of like talked out.
Yeah. Well, that's what we do. We talk for a living.
And then I feel like I'm bothering people because I'm talking too much.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, they've already heard this guy. This guy just blah, 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 blah. Because you have that post-show energy.
Right.
Where you're like kind of like, you can talk for another hour if you had to.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So I just feel like I'm boring boring people. Like I'd rather just get with the couple people I know and just like talk hockey or talk,
right.
AC/DC or whatever.
Well, it's like
and not have to like not be on. I guess that's
yes.
I guess that would be like if you just want to. Because I'm sure you get this too, like, well, you're not like on, like, I'm not on.
Yeah, well, it's like, I'm sure
if you're a cook, you don't
come home and cook after your shift. Like, I can't wait to get home and just start making meals for the week.
Right. Or whatever the case may be. Like, you're a photographer, you're not like, you can't wait to go take more pictures.
Yeah. I think, too, it's funny because I'm sure your wife gets asked. I know my girlfriend gets asked when she's there at a show and someone goes like, oh, what's it like being with a comedian? Is it funny? It's like, no, they're not funny all the time. We're not on all the time.
Oh, comedians' wives are saints.
Yeah,
they're saints. I mean, we always kid around. There should be like the First Wives Club, like all the comics' wives get around it, or just sit around and tell the stories. Yeah, it's like because everyone sees the on stage,
right, and they think
comic.
we're just like
no one sees the off stage part. What's really funny that you talk about not wanting to be on stage all the time, but we've been together like almost 20 years, so it's funny because like she can't stand the fact that I need her to pay attention when I'm talking to her. like constantly. Like if she's like looking at the newspaper, I'll be like, hey, like,
Hey, what are you doing?
Yeah. And she'll be like, Bartnick, I'm not in the crowd. I didn't pay to see you. Like I can listen to you.
Oh my God, that's funny.
I can listen to you while you're talking to me, but like I need the eye contact,
right?
It's stuff like that. The other thing she hates, because I do, and I don't know, I just do this, is like I'll always hit her when I talk to her. Not hit her.
Yeah. But like, no, I know exactly, because I do it too.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
yeah.
A little tap on the arm. Hey.
In the car, I always do that in the car, and it drives her freaking nuts. Like that. But yeah, no. But the whole thing with just everything that because I think the worst is people who know their wives are married and then want to do comedy. No,
right.
That never works out. Not never, very. But most of the people, like, we meet our women when we're comics,
right?
So they know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
So they know what they're getting into. But it's just funny because like everything that they put up with, and all of us, it's like it's just a different thing because we're not like other people.
Right.
We're not.
We're hard to deal with at times. Like.
Yeah, we're different.
Yeah.
Everybody's different, but there's like just a different breed. Like we almost kind of get along with our own only and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I thought of this the other day, and tell me if you think this makes any sense. I may have even mentioned it on the podcast, but I was saying how, like, how nowadays, like, comics always getting shit for telling jokes during tragedies, right?
Yeah.
We just, our natural instinct, even whether we say it or not, something bad happens, and immediately we start in our heads cracking little jokes about it.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was saying how, like, nowadays, right? I mean, we always get shit for it. If we say something public, people, hey, this is a comedian and they're the worst person. But I'm like, there's so many different people with much different, I don't want to say like mental illnesses but mental conditions, right? And if someone's trying to express themselves or whatever, they're like, oh, we have to be supportive. That's the way they are and that's the way they think. But I'm like, well, why can't comics be people that in order for us to be able to process something tragic, we have to make it less threatening by joking about it. It's like a defense mechanism for what's going on. So no one's like, hey, comedians just think differently than other people.
Right.
And for them to process something tragic or dark or whatever, they have to make it less threatening by making it funny. But they act like we're monsters, and we just like you said, we're just different.
Yeah, that's just how we get through life. Like when we have something bad happens to us, like the first thing is, well, at least I got 3 new minutes out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Where's the joke?
Yeah,
it's there somewhere.
No matter what's going on, I'm thinking of the joke.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's how we deal with everything.
And I think that's almost like if you're that kind of person, if you're listening and you're that guy in the group of friends who's always getting in shit for telling a joke at an inappropriate time, you might just need to find a stage and get on it.
Right.
You might be a comedian who doesn't know he's a comedian yet.
Yeah. No, exactly.
And I wanted to ask you too, if you don't mind. Like we're going back a ways.
It's your show,
dude. It is your show. My one-man podcast is me shooting the shit with myself. But when I do these interviews, I try to make it about
1.5.
This is a 1.5. It's a one-man podcast interviewing one other man. But I wanted to ask, do you remember what your very first set was like?
Yeah, it was terrible.
Really?
Yeah, it was terrible. I was not an overnight like, hey, we did an open mic and killed, and then I got carried off. Like I think the first 4 or 5 shows of mine were terrible. Did
you bring the safety blanket? That's what we call here when someone invites like all their friends.
No.
Some people are absolutely not. Some people are like, oh, I have
to.
I
get it. It was very funny. Is my first show ever started me and still to this day one of my best friends in the world, Brian Kellen, who travels the world with George Lopez, and John Hugajian is kind of like a local legend-ish guy. He's a great comic, done some TV work, but he's still in the Bay Area. We all started the same night at this place called the Luggage Store, which is like an art gallery on Market Street in San Francisco, which is one of the main streets in San Francisco. But there's about a 4-block range where it looks like the bar from Star Wars. Like it's just it's just the most evil crackhead, evil. I mean, just the like the cops don't even walk down those streets. It's like it's just nasty, and it's right in there. And you go up the stairs. So like that's where my first.
So they were always very polite and listened to the show.
Yeah, no, they weren't even. It was like 30 comics or 40 comics.
Oh wow!
You each get like 5 minutes. And the great Tony Sparks, he's still running open mics around the city. He would run it. So I did like 3 or 4 of those. And I think I did like another one somewhere. And then I did this Sunday afternoon at this Irish bar where I was in the middle of my set and the jukebox started playing. And then people were like, shut that off. Where I'm like, wow, I'm better than like an old Foreigner song. That was the first
funny.
recognition in like 6 sets of like, oh, okay, like someone cared.
Oh yeah, and it's so funny that you mentioned Foreigner of all bands, because that's actually part. We'll get to it later, but that's actually part of that hockey trivia thing.
Oh well, I was just looking into maybe going to see Foreigner at the Greek because that Cheap Trick is opening.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was
show.
just texting my wife like, hey, let's get these tickets.
That's awesome. Now, I wanted to ask you this too, because different part of North America. But do you remember how long it was before? Now, you said you did these open mic shows. Were you already working at the Punchline at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because I started doing stand-up a few open, like we're talking maybe 5-6 times on stage at different open mics around the city, maybe once or twice at Absolute here. And then I did the same thing. I'm like, I want to be around this. I want to learn from these people. But I was living at home. I actually had a pretty good job. I left that job to pursue stand-up. My mom, who was the biggest supporter ever since I was a kid, telling me to be a comic. I had never any interest in it.
Really?
Yeah, and I've told this story to my audience before, so I'll give you the Coles Notes version. But basically, I never wanted to be a comic. I guess maybe in the back of my head, I was always like, I'm probably just funny around my friends, or funny to people who know me, or maybe you feed me a line and I'll get a... But I was like, am I going to walk up in front of a room full of strangers who don't know me, who aren't feeding me lines, and just make them laugh? So I never really wanted it, and I never really had that thing about me that I'm like, oh, I'm funny, I got to do this. So when I finally, tried it, and I had enough people telling me to do it, I was mid-20s, late 20s, and I finally did it. When I told my mom that I was thinking of doing it, I said, I just don't know how I'm going to do a job that pays me nothing for God knows how long. She was like, if you pursue stand-up comedy, you can move home, live here rent-free, and just, I want to see you, but you give it your all. And I was like, that sounds a lot more supportive than some of the stories I've heard. So I did that, but because I was living rent free, whatever, I wanted to contribute. So I'm like, listen, I need some sort of income.
Right.
So I was bugging Jason like every night. I'd be at the club watching the pros. I'd ask them questions of the shows, and eventually I was like, hey, you need a doorman or a guy in the kitchen or whatever it was. So same thing. I eventually got a job working the door there. And I was sitting down listening to the headliners who had come through, asking questions and trying to learn as much about the business as I could. So I was lucky, same as yourself, to be around that environment.
Well, a lot of comics. I mean, Attell started working. Attell and Kevin Brennan worked the door at the Improv. Yeah. In New York. So I mean, millions of comics start out working at the club.
Yeah.
We all want to be around it. I mean, yeah, I know. It was literally like. I mean, I didn't even know about open mics. Like, I didn't know how to. I just wanted to do it. So I went there and I got hired. It's a funny story because I showed up to one of my best friends in the world hired me. I'm like, I'm supposed to be there at 3 or at 4. I'm like, well, I don't want to go early. So I went at 4. Like, I used to be here at 3. I go, and I told him, I go, well, here's why. And he goes, okay. And I got hired.
Okay, fair enough.
And then I go, yeah, I want to do this. And they go, well, start hanging out on Sunday nights. So I hung out on Sunday night, and it was just a million comics, and it was back when it was the height of SF comedy. So it was literally like I'm like, oh my God, I'm too good to get on this. I mean, these guys are too good. I can't get on this stage. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, start hanging out at these open mics. And that's what made me go to my first open mic.
And it was the same for me. I was watching shows, the amateur shows at Yuck Yucks, the weekend shows. And then eventually one of the guys who hosted a lot of the stuff was just like, hey, I see you guys here, my group of my friends. Yeah. See you guys a lot. I run a show on Sunday night. You guys should come check it out. And we did. And it was in the basement of a bar. And we were like, oh, you can do comedy in a, you know what I mean? Like we just didn't, I was like, oh, that's the same acts I'm seeing at the clubs that I'm paying money to see. I can see them here for cheaper. And so I did. And just wasn't long afterwards. But I know in Ottawa, like what I wanted to ask you is, do you remember how long it was before you start getting like paid work? Like you're doing spots, you're doing open mics when you cross that threshold, and like now I'm getting paid gigs, I'm getting paid spots. Because in Ottawa, the guys progress quickly, but I think personally, the two club owners are kind of softies. Like when I started to come up, and I know this is an old jaded pay your dues kind of thing, but when I started coming up, it took guys a lot longer to get recognized for their talents, and then started getting paid weekends and paid one-nighters and corporates and things like that. So do you remember how long it was when you went from like, I'm just a guy getting up doing spots to now you're one of the paid guys, you're doing weekends,
it took me a while. It took me a while. I wasn't that good. It took me long. It took me a little longer than most to get on Sundays because I had worked there.
Right. And
it took me a little longer than most to get hosting work because I was working there.
Right.
I think so. Just a little bit. But then once I was proven that they liked me, then I got way more advantages from working there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like then they're like, oh, we love Bartnick. He's family. And then they knew they wanted me on, and I was good comic, so they wanted me on with the best people. Like, so whenever it was Chappelle or Attell or Wanda Sykes back in those days, it was like 4 or 5 of us that were like the main hosts.
Right.
Then they'd sprinkle in other people, but like the main ones that Will's wanted, like, hey, this is a great show.
Yeah, they wanted to be strong.
Yeah,
right,
the whole way, and you want to impress. You don't want to tell to go back to New York. The opener and the feature guy were terrible.
Right.
It's like but then I went up quickly, and the great thing was in Sacramento was like 2 hours away, and I had a pickup truck, and so they knew where I'd be at in the day. I'd answer phones in the day, so they knew that once traffic would hit like at 4 or 5, if something fell out, it's hard to get there from San Francisco.
Right.
But I had a truck, and then I could get my girlfriend. I'd tell her there was a department store right next to the Punchline in Sacramento. I'd say, I'll drive you up there. Come on, so I could go in the carpool lane. I could beat everyone there. So they knew like at 4:30 I could like
so much strategy.
They knew like I could make it there. You know what I mean? So yeah, it took her like 3 years to figure out that there was actually a Nordstrom's Rack in San Francisco. She goes, "There's one right downtown." I go, "If I told you that, you'd never go to Sacramento."
That's so funny. And that's Nordstrom, you said? We just got one of those in Ottawa.
Yeah, there's a Nordstrom's Rack. It's like an upscale Ross or TJ Maxx. It's like
right.
So women
don't
love that.
I don't know
shit.
if we have TJ
Maxx. Women love that. I've been saying TJ Maxx the whole time I can because you don't have Ross. Do you guys have Ross Dress for Less?
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh yeah.
But Nordstrom, I know. Like we have a big Nordstrom.
Yeah,
here.
but regular Nordstrom is like Macy's.
Oh, okay. I thought
Nordstrom's
Nordstrom Rack,
Rack,
it sounded like a small version of Nordstrom.
No, Nordstrom's Rack is like, okay, the stuff they don't sell is then a lot cheaper.
Right. So like an outlet version of the same thing.
Right, but just like the whatever, everything's just cheaper. So if you
it's like the upper class peasant stuff.
Right. Yeah. So if you root around for a while, you're going to find something nice a lot cheaper.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, hey, that's good. I was going to ask too, like in terms of, I mean, now you've traveled all over. I hit the early stuff, and I appreciate you going over because I know everybody asks, hey, what are your beginnings and stuff like that. But do you have
Not in a while. No one's asked in a while. So.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't done like an old school like how did you start podcast in a while.
Yeah, well,
I've been doing a lot more with just like where the friends were just wacky.
I love
way
that
more
stuff.
of like Charlie Rose.
Well, it's just kind of one of those like because I mean I can sit around. We're gonna hang out this week. I can ask you all these questions, but I figure like it's kind of cool for other people, like other comics, get inspiration from you guys.
Totally cool.
Now, do you have any favorite places to perform? Doesn't have to be a long one or whatever, but I just figured.
The Punchline San Francisco is my home. I like the Stand in New York City. I like those two clubs. Cities, I love Chicago. I love Pittsburgh, obviously my hometown. I love New York. I love Seattle. I like San Francisco. Minneapolis is a great comedy town.
Nice. Are there any good clubs in Pittsburgh now? Because you were saying when you realized there's no comedy, no.
Yeah, well, the Improv's a great club. And I've played some theaters in Pittsburgh. There's it's really become a comedy town thanks to. I'll give a plug to Randy Bauman, and he's like the king of the morning radio, and he's a really cool guy. And between him and at one time Jimmy Crenn, and now it's Bill Crawford, who's a stand-up. They've really procured having guys on the air and really publicized comedy. So there's a lot of good talent out there now.
There's a lot of that in the States too, like the doing the radio and pushing comedy like that. I think it feels like it's more respected in the States than it is in Canada. Like we don't have a star system here. Our government, the Arts Council, doesn't even recognize stand-up comedy as an art form. Like you could
I don't know if I don't even know if we have a government anymore, but
it's being sold off. Put on Kijiji.
I don't know what's going on in my country, but I don't know if they consider. I guess you can win like a congressional medal. I guess
you can win a congressional medal for comedy.
Well, no, they have the thing like the Kennedy Senator Presents or the Presidential Achievement Award. They'll give it to like. Bill Cosby, or they may
They're
take
gonna give it
back.
to Cosby.
They may take it back. He may swing it like to put someone to sleep, hypnotize them with it.
That's right. No evidence that way.
Yeah,
but are getting away with a lot of stuff.
But it's not it's comedy. I mean, in the entertainment world, is just one step above mimes and magicians and. Street perform, in Hollywood, it's not respected. In New York, no, it's not respected at all. In New York, it's respected as an art form.
Really?
Yeah.
I just mean like it sounds like you see I see a lot of videos of comedians on the States on U.S. radio stations, different cities, local radio. So like here, like you want to bring a comedian on, like you contact the radio station, they're like, why the fuck would we do that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you know
Absolutely.
what I mean? So like they seem to be.
Like I did like the thanks to my fans that wanted me to do the Rob Mike Richards show from TSN. So he had me on, but they usually don't have comics. You know what I mean? So and I did the radio station in Kingston. But usually like if I'm here all week, I'll be getting up if it was America, I'd get up every morning and go do a radio station.
Right.
To promote the shows, which does it promote the shows or not is a different question, but at least you're on the air getting your name out there.
Right.
You know, I don't know how many people up at 6 a.m. are the same people that go, hey, let's go to the comedy show.
I think they're the ones who need it the most personally.
No, but they might go on the weekend though.
Oh, yes. No, they're not going during the week.
Yeah.
Like, they got to be up at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
I know, I hear you. I actually had a conversation with someone the other day, one of my partners for another podcast, who was like, yeah, like comics. He goes, I love comedy. I think comedy is underappreciated. And he goes, if you just want to know how important it is to have someone who's funny and who's able to steer conversation, boring, like big events and stuff like that, because there's a reason that the Oscars always get, comedians, or at least try to always get a comedian to be the host for something like that. And all the years that sucked, it was always like an actor or something. But when you had someone like Billy Crystal or somebody hosting Chris Rock, did Ricky Gervais do it? I think
he does one of those where
they
get mad at him. He's so funny because he shits on everybody. I think it's like, do you think he does the Golden Globes? I don't think
is that the one? Okay.
Maybe they let him do an Oscar. I don't know. Well, I thought Letterman was hilarious when he did it, but he gets universally panned.
Right. Well, I think
I just like when famous people get shit on. I don't know. I mean, I've only acted in a few things, and I'm not an actor, so and I don't want to sound like a sour grapes or whatever. I can't find anything more repulsive than when actors take what they do like they're curing cancer.
Yeah. Who was it that did an Oscar speech that was like, this doesn't matter? Oh, it was Seinfeld. Wasn't it Seinfeld? He won like an Emmy or an Oscar or something. He's like, the awards mean nothing. This is ridiculous. Have you seen that video?
I vaguely remember it, but yeah. Well, that's one thing Stern would always do. Now, Stern's turned the corner. Now he's sucking up to everybody, but he used to always just say that. I don't know. I can't. Okay, you're a good actor. You're playing pretend. The only award shows I watch are the YouTube clips of the, I want to say the intro, the monologue.
Okay.
That's all I'll watch. Because to me, there's nothing more ridiculous. And now there's people out there like, oh, well, you watch hockey and that's just stupid. Well, whatever. Different strokes. I hate to be a hater.
Right.
But to me, there's nothing more ridiculous than... I even understand people in Hollywood or people in New York that are in the industry and want to see their friends or want to see the trends or whatever. But to be in Omaha, Nebraska, or to be in Ottawa and to watch rich people, infinitely rich people, congratulate themselves and give themselves awards for playing make-believe blows my mind.
Yeah.
It just
and
blows,
then
it just blows
and then
my
all their
mind
acceptance speeches are about how to change the world. Here's how we who play pretend should tell you to take care.
Yeah, it just blows my mind that anyone would care like about other people like that. Like I don't know, that aren't interesting.
Yeah,
on any level. Like it's one thing if you want to watch whatever the whatever a bunch of people that study volcanoes.
Yeah,
or whatever give awards to each other, and you can hear what they're doing.
Yeah, or even like there's why is there no like medical advancement like what is it what's the one
with
Nobel Awards? Those ones are good awards. People are out there doing things for the world. But the make believe ones, it's almost like watching the draft for the next year of actors, because once they win an award, now they're worth more.
Right.
So that's all it is. To me, it's like let's give out the awards. You're kind of like watching the actors draft. That's an industry thing. You know what I mean? They're going, oh, shit, well, let's not get him for next year's thing because now he's going to cost more. You just want to fucking Oscar.
Or you're just like, it's like whose agency pushed the best to get them the Oscar.
Yeah, it's like, who the fuck is the Academy? They don't come out and introduce themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's jury. I don't think I could name one fucking person that's ever...
Wouldn't it be so much more interesting to like see the guy that won the Nobel Peace Prize and like see his little bio of what he did that year? Than to see whoever, oh my God, this pretty girl played an ugly girl, and that's why she's like a hero.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I'm infinitely more interested in like the composers. Like when they give awards for a good score or something like that, I'm like, okay, yeah, those people are working. They're making music. The people who are making dinosaurs run in movies with the CGI or whatever, I'm like, that's impressive to me. Yeah. I'm like, so even that I could appreciate a little bit. But when it's like the actors, let's save the best for last. It's like, you mean the guy whose face was in half the movie and the rest of it was fucking the computer guy who've never heard of, Billy Any Kid.
Right.
I don't know. I'm with you on that in terms of just the whole self-congratulatory nature of it. It is kind of like they are just being paid millions of dollars to play dress up.
Yeah.
Way oversimplification, but at the end of the day,
yeah,
it would be nice to see the medical awards or the science awards, or like I said, they can televise the Nobel,
right?
Prizes or whatever. I'm not curing anything. I don't know anything. So.
Yeah. And I'm
completely
literally not trying to. I'm more like not shitting on the actors. I'm more like in disbelief of why America or Canada cares.
Right. Well, if we didn't give a shit, they wouldn't have a televised award show. There's an hour of red carpet dresses first. Like, why the fuck does that matter?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, like they can do whatever they want. I just can't believe that people care.
Yeah.
Like I'm all for whoever. Like, and that's what I mean. If you're in the industry, I get that. It's like, whatever. Like the dentist convention. They have a convention. Someone gets dentist of the year. It's not televised.
Right. Yeah. It's recognized by the industry, but it's not like, can we get some. That's
right.
so funny. Getting back to your stand-up, my good sir, I wanted to ask, and the answer may be no, but do you remember any like huge successes that you had? Now this sounds like a stupid question. Like, hey, do you have any success? No, but do you remember any like big moments in your career, big successes, or any like big failures, setback moments? Like any time where you were like, this is fucking amazing, or like this. Maybe like, did you ever have a feeling like you wanted to quit? Every
day.
Yeah, same here. I mean, that's almost
every day. Like that's enough.
But did you ever have anything that like set you back huge, or that really propelled you forward? Like any moments like that in your career?
I had pneumonia for like 4 months about 4 years ago. That really hurt me because I was just struggling to live. But I was touring with Lisa back then, near the end of when I was doing like a lot of the work. I think that held me back a little bit. But held me back. I definitely think sometimes like my lack of, I'm a hard worker, but I'm not a go-getter. Does that make any sense? I think that might help me. Like I was talking about how a lot of work came to me easily. Like I'll go do the guest set at this Funny Bone, and all of a sudden like they'll call me for like 6 weeks of work.
Right.
And all of a sudden you fall out for a year doing something else. It's like I got a college bill, someone changed. Oh, okay.
So in spurts, it's not like a steady race.
I just mean, so my own personal kind of, not laziness per se, but like unwillingness to make my own phone calls or whatever might have held me back. But I don't like, I never had like that big of I've worked on some television shows or for some production companies where maybe I've done the wrong thing or not produced well enough and got fired or let go. But stand-up wise, I don't think I've had anything that was really like, oh, that was terrible, that held me back. Right.
And did you have any moments that were just like, I've heard a friend of mine has a great podcast called The Generators, and he talks to a lot of people, and a lot of them seem to always have this moment where they say that like your life can change with a phone call or an email sometimes.
Right.
Where just one thing happens and it just propels you forward, and all you had to do is just grind. Like I guess I'm just one of those. Did you have any big moments in stand-up, even if it was just a great night or a great moment?
Well, stand-up wise, because I was kind of Dave Attell's designated driver, because I could drink with him all night and then still like drive around, and take him where I had to go. That he was like, oh, I want to see your set, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's the king. And he had me on. He goes, do a guest set tomorrow night. So I did, and I had a good set, and a couple of people I looked up to were there and like, hey, great job. And then literally like the next day, Jeff Wills, the guy we're talking about, his secretary called me and said, hey, do you want to work this week?
Nice.
So that was like that was when I first started getting after getting up on Sundays a lot and doing well, they still hadn't given me like the week yet.
Nice.
And that was like the kind of that did that.
And that's cool to like, and we're not talking like you impressed, your regular rotational, like, dude, you.
Yeah. Well, that's why. That's why he's helped me out a bunch since. And that was one of my first one. I told you the Lisa story. That was a big one for me. And, honestly, when I did, I think other than maybe Nia, Bill's wife, who wasn't his wife at the time, I think I was the first human being on Bill Burr's podcast that wasn't Bill Burr.
Wow.
And that was kind of like doing the Tonight Show.
Oh God. Yeah.
because especially the way nowadays how everything's fractured, that it was like I instantly a bunch of people knew who I was. So there's a million things that lead up to.
Right. Yeah. We all have great shows. There's a ton of fun nights.
Yeah.
And things
to
we
think
have
back,
happening.
I'm probably missing something, but.
Well, to be honest with you, in all fairness, if I was to be asked that question right now, I don't know what my answer would be right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But just sometimes people have that like, oh, I know exactly when it was, and it was right here. Like the worst thing I had happen, the best thing I had happen. But like I said, in all fairness, I don't truthfully know that I could answer that question off the top of my head. That's why I said there's nothing there. But in terms of like I said, I mean, we talked early on about you're the host of the Puck Off podcast. When did you start? Like, do you mind telling me a little bit about that podcast and the listeners too?
Yeah, no, not at all. How long you want me to tell you?
Dude, whatever you like. Like I said, this show is to promote.
Yeah, no. Because basically, I love hockey, and in LA, especially this is like the Kings are Kings. I think had already won their first cup, but it's like getting big. And Sideshow, a division of Levity, had a bunch of big time podcasts, and my partner. Fraser Smith is a legendary LA comic and radio DJ who was, he's like he was like the Howard Stern of LA for years. Became like did Hollywood Squares, hosted game shows, and they came to him, and he had been doing a baseball show with Jay Johnstone, Dodger legend, and they go, hey, can you do a hockey show? Because the GM, the main guy, the CEO of that division was a hockey guy, and Fraser's like, I know just the guy.
That's awesome.
So we started. It's coming up on our 5th year.
Nice. Okay, and that answers my next question. And you guys just talk about whatever's going on, like in hockey.
Yeah, I guess that was the point of the question of how long, because the first year we always had a million comics or actors, and some of them really knew hockey, and some of them were from Chicago, and we talked about deep dish pizza after. Oh, Chelios was great, and then we talked pizza for an hour. Then it came to the beginning of the year. Then it came to the playoffs. Well, the playoffs, and it's hockey. People get intense.
Oh God,
it gets serious. So then we just started really talking hockey, and not like pizza or anything. So then it ended, and it was the summer started, and it was summer. So we didn't know better than not to keep going.
Right.
So we come up with our 10 favorite Islanders or our 10 favorite Canadians or whatever.
Yeah.
So that got us through the next year, and then we're like, hey, let's just. Our numbers kept going up. We're like, hey, let's just talk hockey and only get the guys that know hockey back.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was the second year. Get bigger. Third year, we had Corey Hirsch came on every week as our NHL guru. He was on Sportsnet, and you guys know him in Canada. So and then just this last year was back to just me and Fraser. And we just have our core of like 5 or 6 guests. But we've had like famous guests over time, but usually just me and Fraser.
How is it?
Every week. That's the big thing. Is knock on wood, we've never missed a week.
Okay,
which is huge in podcasting.
Have you recorded it from Canada while you've been here, or do you have like canned episodes? Is this
the summer series? We have 2 in the can. This week's will be canned. The one like Friday will be canned. It's funny because we had one in the can because I was incensed that it's funny because my. I'm going to say my opener, the guy on the show with me, Evan, big hockey guy. And I said, this last week's show was about how Evgeny Malkin, one of my top 2 or 3 favorite players ever, didn't make the top 100 of all time.
Really?
Isn't that insane?
I don't like him. I'm just joking.
Yeah, but you got to admit he's one of the top 100 players of all time.
I couldn't tell you. He's an outstanding player, but I don't know enough about hockey to rank him up against everybody. Now, if we were talking Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier. Yeah. But I'm like, once I start to get down into the other ones, do you know what I mean? We got the
some people say like he's top 50, 60, whatever the case may be.
Right.
He didn't make the top 100. So I looked at the list like 20 times, like it must be a typo. Then I saw Adam Oates was on the list, which incensed me because Adam Oates isn't one. I'm like, how's he in the top 100? Period.
Right.
So then we did this last week's show was 100 players better than Adam Oates. Not on the list.
I love that.
So that's summer programming. Now this week's program, we had a director who he had a guy that looked exactly like Henrik Zetterberg.
Right.
And they went around New York filming episodes of him being dressed up as Henrik Zetterberg for no reason.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's a little offbeat stuff, and then we get back because there's about 6 weeks where you can't do like previews for next season or what happened the season before or the free agency. Like halfway through July, all the free agents are just about done except for a little like wrap up for 10 minutes.
Right.
So that's where we're at now. But yeah, but every show. So we got one. And then so tomorrow you hear this like tomorrow or whatever. But August 1st they'll be fresh.
Nice.
They're back to being fresh because I'll be back in America.
And I love
because I didn't know that the condo would be free phones.
Oh, okay.
So it's like to call in and pay for like $50 for an episode. Like,
that's not worth
it. But this way it gives my producer the week off and everyone can kind of
Absolutely. And you're still doing live, which I really like you. And I think the fucking names are clever is on Facebook. You do your morning skate.
Yeah. Facebook and Twitter. And for the historical value, they're all on the YouTube Puck Off podcast page.
Okay, sweet.
What gets there's like highways in Siberia that get more traffic than that Puck Off page. Because in the beginning, I wasn't putting them up on that page. So, and I still don't have a way because I give them first to the Punch Drunk Sports guys because they've always been good to me. So it goes on their website and then my Twitter.
Right.
So, it's just kind of not to keep them all on my phone. So it's kind of like a historical record of the whole season. You can go back and see, this is when that trade happened. You can see my take, or this is that game.
Yeah, and I like them because they're short and sweet. It's not like you're on there doing like a 7-minute video. Like it's
short.
Well,
they all have to be under 2 minutes.
Right.
For Twitter. So.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's right too.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a link to a YouTube, but to keep it right on there.
Yeah, to be from my phone.
Smart. That's smart. Well, I know that like.
And that really is the most skills I have in the computer is to get it from my phone to YouTube or Twitter. Like that is it.
Yeah. Well, I remember watching the like I have not been into hockey in years ever since I started stand up. I was telling you the night I used to have season tickets. And but I started stand up comedy the year afterwards. Like I did those playoffs for the cup.
Yeah.
I watched all the games the next season and then I started the next year. So I had the second season of tickets and I couldn't give them away. Because people thought the price that I had was it was too good to be true. And so I would try to sell the tickets online for $40 for a pair of tickets on that center ice line, like I showed you. But I had like open mics to be on. Like my passion was comedy, not sitting around. I'm home for free.
Well, that was another Jeff Will story. I had AC/DC tickets.
Oh, wow.
And that's my band. And which is a funny story. Long story short, he goes, "Well, are you an AC/DC fan or are you a comic?" It was like a one-off with somebody in some little theater in San Francisco. I'm like, I'm a comic. Here, give my tickets away.
Wow.
Went saw him in San Jose. Because the funny thing is, because it happened the year the Penguins won their first cup, 1991, the night of Game 6, AC/DC played outside of Pittsburgh.
Wow.
I went to see AC/DC because it was Game 6. If it was Game 7, then it's like you don't know, but that's how I saw the Penguins win their first cup. Was Brian Johnson came out and goes, "Congratulations, Pittsburgh! You just won the fucking Stanley Cup." And then on the big screen, you see them skating and kissing the cup.
Oh,
and it's AC/DC crowd as it is. The whole place just became mayhem.
Yeah. Oh god.
And then just ran home and like watched it on a VCR tape. Like this is the greatest.
Well, that's and yeah, like I said, I mean those are the choices you have to make. I chose my second year. I wanted to do stand up. I had to be at open mics. I had to be at the club working the door. Like I couldn't even go to the games.
Yeah.
So it was that option. Like I said, yes, I moved home and I pursued stand up, but at the same time I couldn't be fucking around, going to hockey games and showing that I'm not pursuing anything. I'm just being a louse. But that's where I lost my passion for hockey because like I said, I paid thousands of dollars for those season tickets. I couldn't sell them. I couldn't give them. I remember standing at the college where the shuttle bus was to go out to the Canadian Tire Center. And I'd be like, guys, 2 free tickets, please. And they're like, no, we're just going to go to a bar. I'm like, these are free tickets to the game. Please take them, get on the bus. And I think people thought I was just fucking them around. They're going to jump on a shuttle bus and go out to the middle of nowhere to find out they're no good. I just didn't want something I paid for. The money's already gone to go to waste. So I got a bad taste in my mouth about the whole thing. And I just paid attention to hockey here and there. Like I could tell you every player on the team, their stats, everything. And right now in the Ottawa Senators, I don't think I could name like more than 3 or 4 players. But I got into it this year because we did a serious run.
Yeah.
And I remember watching your morning skates in the morning. And I'm like, Joe's my buddy, but you're like, making donuts against Ottawa. I'm like, you motherfucker. I'm like, I can't wait to see you. I remember at one point it was looking real good for Ottawa. And I'm like, if my guys beat your Pens, I'll take you out for lunch, right? Lunch will be that way you can't lose. And I'm sitting there going, those couple of games, or what was it, like 7-0 or 8-0 or 8-1, or there was a game. I think it was like game 6 or 5 where we just had our asses handed to us for so long. It was
I think game 5, because then we came up and you guys won game 6,
and it was so important because we hadn't scored a goal in like fucking 80 minutes or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
So everyone was like, I'm like, that's such a huge goal because they need to be able to just know that they can fucking score on this guy.
Oh yeah.
And thank God game 7 happened the way it did. Just in the sense that like double overtime, everyone was playing hard in that game. So like, nobody went out with their tail between their legs.
No, there was no goats. I felt so bad for Anderson. I mean,
Yeah.
he played his ass off. I mean, he was insane.
Yeah. For the record, everyone, he's wearing a 5-time Stanley Cup Champions Penguin shirt right in front of me right now. So salt on the wound. But no, that's awesome. And I wanted to ask too. Now, obviously,
It was the clean one. I had like 3 T-shirts, and that was like the cleanest
You're
one.
like, I have one for every night of the week to wear in Ottawa, just to remind them what happened.
No, this is the first time I've worn. And it was the first time I've worn it because your nice condo facilities. Thank you, Jason. You have laundry, so this is just. I've been walking around here, so I got like the 2 I've been wearing got sweaty.
Right,
and
right.
you can't put on like dirty clothes.
Are you liking the city so far? Have you seen it?
Yeah, Ottawa was nice. I walked. I didn't do the lake route, but because there's 2 routes to take a walk. But
Right.
yesterday I took the walk through Little Italy, and then little whatever Asian.
Oh,
that is.
Chinatown?
It was Chinese. It looked like Thai and everything. It looked like everything.
Probably everything.
Yeah.
We have Thai restaurants in Little Italy.
Yeah,
Like, we
I
have
know.
all the cultures and all the cultural
Right.
designated
So
zones.
then I went down to the Parliament building and all that area. So that was neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ours, you see our White House that looks like a castle.
Yeah, it looks like you have like lords and bards and all that stuff. It looks like the
And
knights.
you can walk right up to the front. Like, you could take tours of it. It's like no big deal. Like,
Yeah, well, Congress is like that. When I was in D.C. this fall, you could walk right up to like the Senate building, like right up. And I'm thinking they must have satellites like doing like laser recognition on my eyes for me to like walk. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to. I don't want to be on some watch list, but I mean, if I had like a jacket full of explosives,
Yeah.
I could have got that.
yeah. No, absolutely.
But not near the White. But the White House is fenced off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Do they still do tours or anything like that? Or is that like press tours that they do for?
I mean, like the teams that win, like the World Series and the Stanley Cups go, but I don't know if you can go. It used to be when you were a kid, you could have like paid to take a White House tour. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And I remember.
You don't get the like tour like Sidney Crosby gets.
Right.
But
you don't get to sit down and have dinner.
Right.
Introduced to the show.
No, but or just like, oh, here's, whatever. Here's where, Clinton did this or whatever.
If you look underneath the desk, there's still the old bubble gum stains.
Yeah.
No, that's that. Yeah, like I mean, I it's fascinating to me because like again, I grew up in this city, so the whole idea of like walking right up to where the prime minister is and stuff like that.
Right.
Like last year, the year before. Anyone listening is gonna hate me if I'm wrong, but there was a guy who shot someone at the War Memorial, which is like right out front of the chateau in Parliament.
Yeah.
Then ran inside to Parliament, and the RCMP had to
I
take him
remember
down.
that because I mean I'm a big hockey guy, so I watch all like the Canadian news, so I knew all that. Yeah, I didn't know he was outside by that flame with the waterfront and the flame.
That's the Eternal Flame. He was actually right across outside of that area. There's a war memorial.
Okay,
it's near Chateau where you guys stayed when you were in town, and maybe at some point if we do a drive, whatever, I'll show you. It's super gorgeous.
Yeah,
but there was a guy who was just basically was like having a guard in that area. Just the guy shot him. There's no reason to shoot him, but shot him. Ran inside the Parliament, and then there was a shootout, and that's where the guy got taken down. But that would never you wouldn't even get on the lawn in the States. You know what I mean? You're not getting up to the White House, running into the White House, running down hallways.
No, yeah. Well, you wouldn't even get that far. Like I said, I was walking around near. It's called Capitol Hill.
Yep.
And walking around, I was doing skates from there, like with the Capitol backdrop.
Yeah.
But there was definitely like army dudes with like machine guns kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, they're not fucking around.
No. But I mean, I was just shocked the fact I could walk up there.
Yeah.
And open my coat and whatever, pull a string if I wanted to. I'm not. Believe me, I don't want to be on some watch list, but I've said in a couple other pockets. It was just shocking to me how.
Yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable. Anyone listening should know that you're saying like I was just really in this day and age. Like, dude, we went to New York like 7-8 years ago. I was telling you about that. That was the day that we were going to see Geraldo and Attell on that Cellar show, and we had to stand in line for like an hour to get on to go through security to get on a ferry to just float around the Statue of Liberty.
Right.
And I'm like, who gives a fuck? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, like,
Yeah.
I guess, but I mean, then why aren't we on all that shit for everything? Every time you get in a car, get scanned real quick, just in case there's one other person with you, right? You're not going through that to get on a bus.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like, I don't know, but there is that it seems sometimes too extreme.
Right.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like nowadays, when you have to do that, how can you walk up to Congress and just be like, nothing?
Yeah.
Don't take my belt off, nothing.
That's
I have to
what
walk
I'm saying.
through a
There
little
must
arch
be-
before I get to go up and see it.
Yes, I mean there must be like a laser recognition.
Yeah, they're just sitting there, just scan
Yeah.
your retinas like
Yeah,
the
like,
fucking.
oh, this guy was in Yemen last week.
Yeah.
Don't stop him.
It's like the Jason Bourne movies. They
Yeah,
got
yeah,
everyone
yeah.
just
Yeah,
scanning the
exactly.
retinas from the street cameras. I wanted to ask too. Like, obviously, you're big with the puck off. Where does your love of hockey come from? Do you have a hockey background? You know, when you were young, did you play? Or?
Well, before Lemieux came to town, there was like 3 hockey rinks, and I wanted to play, but my mom and dad were like, A, we're not made of money, and B, we're not getting up at 3 a.m. to take you to hockey practice.
Yeah.
So we always just played street hockey. That's why I have sweet hands. We just always played orange ball hockey, like,
Right.
all the time. All the time we played, and I loved it. And my grandfather was the biggest hockey fan when nobody was, like when the Penguins wore blue.
Okay.
He'd watch hockey on black and white television, and like he had like a little transistor radio that could get all the different AM things. So he'd be watching the Penguins, listening to the Rangers, or watching the Penguins, listening to the Capitals, or whoever. Any big city had like the big 1,000,000-watt AM station. You could get in Pittsburgh. You could get like Chicago, New York, so
Nice.
yeah. So I just always liked hockey, and then Lemieux came to town, and then when I was in
That's fucking
high
exciting.
school, and then the rest is history.
Yeah,
it's like,
and his number was I didn't know this. I read this morning in the book there, but his number was a tribute to Wayne Gretzky.
Mhm.
He flipped it and did that. There's a whole couple of pages articles of like where everyone got their numbers from.
oh yeah,
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. This is one guy whose name was Heinz or whatever.
57.
Yeah, and he did it because of the condiment or whatever,
Yeah.
just for fun.
Well, Yager's 68 because that's when Yugoslavia fought Russia.
Yeah.
And a lot of famous guys are 19 because of Brian Trottier.
Well,
Like
there was
Iserman's 19 because of Trottier. Sakic's 19 because of Trottier.
Well, that's the thing. 19 is my lucky number. So Jason Spezza, Joe Thornton, Joe Sakic, Steve Yzerman.
All because of Trotch.
Yeah. I was just happy to have so many fucking great players with that number. I'm like, I got my lucky number and great
Oh,
fucking
how'd you
jerseys.
like number 19?
Just my birthday.
That was like, something like a Dungeons and Dragons thing. 20. You need 20-sided dice to have a lucky 19. I'm gonna roll a 19.
Yeah. Just kidding. I carry around pockets and pockets of dice trying to hit. No, a number that always like everything coincidental seems to happen around 19s for me. So I'm like, just
Right.
it's my birthday.
No, they're the best looking girls.
Yeah, I only have sex with 19s. By
Yes.
the way, they're well over the 10s.
No 18-year-olds, no 20-year-olds, only 19-year-olds.
Any big hockey moments?
Oh yeah, I mean we could do 5 hours on.
Okay, well we could.
Yeah,
Do you have
I saw the Kings win their first cup. The cup was handed out on the ice in L.A.
That's pretty awesome.
I should have seen it 2 years ago in Pittsburgh, but they choked Game 5.
No, that's no good.
And then I was at Game 5 this year though at the Stanley Cup Finals. That was awesome. They won 6-0. So that was the best hockey game I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
But I saw like Lemieux score 8 points. I saw the outdoor game this year when they beat the Fly. I mean, I've seen so many great hockey things.
Well, and that's it's hard to narrow.
I saw Lemieux hit 50 goals, and then Yager hit 50 goals in the same game, and Brendan Shanahan had a hat trick. My mom was like, "Who's any good on the other team?" I'm like, "That guy Shanahan." He was like 2 years in the league. He's playing for Hartford. He had a hat trick. Yeah, I just seen some great stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's hard to say too. When you're a fan of something, there's so many moments you like. I read that you wrote for the NHLPA. Yeah,
I did some stuff whenever the NHL, they were trying to get, there's a few more guys now because Chicago kind of got famous. They got Kane and Taves and some, but for a while there was just always Ovechkin and Crosby. And so the Players Association wanted, internet stuff that showed other guys having fun and doing things.
Yeah.
So I would interview them and stuff like that and make it fun. Hey, who's the best singer on the team, or who has the worst iPod? Or
I've always liked those questions more than the whole. Okay, so what do you guys need to do next game? Like, that's the same fucking question in and out. And I find too that politicians, they get the same question like day in and day out. And I thought what was really funny, I got a friend who's going to be on one of the comedy shows here in Canada. Okay. And I said, they do like sketch comedy, but they also do those goofy interview questions. And I was going to say a great idea for that would be ask the politicians the hockey questions, ask the hockey players the politician questions.
And it's Canada, so the politicians all know the hockey questions.
Yeah, so how funny would be, it'll be like, what do you think Pittsburgh needs to do to tighten up next week against to have some politicians like, or ask a hockey player a question about politics.
Right. Well, they're pretty like middle and that kind of thing. But it's fun when they open up. That's when you get them laughing. Like whose iPod's more embarrassing.
Yeah, and these guys, I mean, we see them on the ice. We saw what you did on the ice. I don't want to ask you what you did on the ice. I want to talk to you about the stuff that we didn't see. You know what I mean? And I think they spend time on planes. They spend time in hotels together. These guys play practical jokes on each other all the time. Right. There's so many great stories that are untapped. Have you heard any of those ones? Like has anyone opened up to you with something that they would probably never say on TV?
Yeah. We'll save that for
okay.
Podcast.
We can do that. Yeah. We can save that. I'd love to have you again. We can just talk that stuff. So what else do I want to ask? I know that my listeners would be very upset with me if I didn't ask. But I mean, obviously you're personal friends with Bill Burr. I just wanted to ask how you guys met. How did you first meet Burr?
Well, I first met Burr. He was I enjoyed his what they have, premium blend, I think, or one of the little like a quick sets they have on American television on Comedy Central. Right. I think it might have been premium blend. It might have been another show like that. And I loved his set. I'm like, this guy's hilarious. And then he was on the Chappelle show, and then they were doing a tour. Charlie Murphy, him, and a couple of the guys from the Donald Rawlings. I think there's another guy too from the show. They did a tour. They came through San Francisco, and I told my buddies like, I don't do that comedy club. I'm like, I just want to go see this guy. Yeah, we can leave. We don't have to stay for Charlie Murphy. Like, it's fine. So we went, saw Bill. It was great, and then he was like hanging out outside, after a set. And I'm like, and we were leaving. Like, oh, just want to say you're hilarious. Blah blah blah. And he goes, and then he goes like, you want a CD or whatever? And I'm like, and I'm literally like, I had no money. Right. And he's like, you're a comic. So I always give him the comics anyway. I think I lost 100 in Atlanta. I think people that weren't even comics were like, I'm a comic.
Oh, you just give him the CD?
Yeah. It's like, I want to charge a comic. So, cut to, Mitch Hedberg died. Friend of mine did great things. He's Mitch. He's on my personal Mount Rushmore. So driving with now the Wills has moved on to bigger things in Live Nation that still owns like the Punchline, but whatever. So now Molly, I started working the door together, like she's my best friends in the world. She's now booking like the openers and the feature or booking the whole club. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's booking everything. So, but we're driving down. Oh, no, that was it. She wasn't the booker yet, but we drove together to Mitch's memorial, and it was like we weren't like crying in the streets, but it was like
pretty devastating.
Yeah. So again, let's put on the Bill Burr CD, and it was like awesome. Cut to like a couple months later, I'm in LA. She gets the job as booker, and she goes, "Hey, guess who's up? Midland for Bill Burr?" And I'm like, "Yes,
nice."
Cut to, I was on stage for like a minute, and because she was all worried if he was gonna like me or not. And he's just like, I love this fucking guy. This guy's the fucking best. And we've been great friends ever since.
That's awesome. That's all it takes sometimes. Just meet the right person.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Now, are you the Rose Bowl legend? Is that you?
I am the Rose Bowl legend, and I'm officially the Rose Bowl legend. There's a little controversy, only because Jason Lawhead, he thinks he's like. He wants to be a Rose Bowl legend, and he's entitled to call himself the Rose Bowl legend.
Okay,
like that's fine. I'm not going to argue with him.
Is this just for the grilling, the tailgate partying, or is this because that's the thing? I've heard the context.
Well, that's the thing. He is like the official chef of the Rose Bowl. He's the official chef of the Rose Bowl, and he's legendary for his things.
Okay,
for cooking.
Okay,
the legend of the Rose Bowl. Or the Rose Bowl legend is because the very first time me and Burr went, got absolutely destroyed Walk up this, barely got in. Like I got in, and I still had a lit Cuban cigar.
So legal cigar.
Yeah.
Lit. Okay.
Illegal.
What's that?
It's illegal.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's an illegal cigar in your hand, still lit.
You get so squished because it's so squished getting in. And we literally drank like a bottle of Crown, like a case of beer, like a bottle of Jaeger. Like it's just like there's like two of us, and we cook steaks on a hibachi. So go in, and so I had a plastic thing around my neck, so I didn't have to I didn't have to hand it to him. So I guess my cigar was in my hand or something. So I go in, we walk up, and the bowl was a bowl with 100,000 people. As we're walking up, they're like in the home of the brave, and like the S10 fighter comes through, like whoa. We're like whoa, just wasted. We go to sit down, and like Bill's knocking over people, and you know how if you watch a college football game, how there's like you'll see like 30,000 people all the exact same color. We were in that section of USC fans, but we were just dressed like two people. So
needless to say, he stood out a bit.
Yeah. So we're just standing there. I'm there, and I'm just smoking my cigar. You know me, I'm a peaceful guy. This lady turns around and just goes, "Oh, Jesus Christ, put that fucking thing out, blah, 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 blah." If she just would have went like, "Hey, can you put that out?" Or, "Hey, oh my God, you're smoking, please." I'm like,
an ounce of courtesy.
I literally have been like, "Holy shit." Like, I wasn't even paying attention.
Right.
But she got so in my face. I just go, "Listen, bitch, you need to lose 40 pounds before you talk to me that way." So then the guy turned, so then she's like, "Oh, fuck you." She gets her husband involved. Her husband looks at me, doesn't want any part of me. So starts fucking with Bill.
Oh, wow.
So
it's like a bar fight. Two guys over here. Next thing you know, everyone's throwing chairs.
So then he's like, "I'm going to do this." And then so they're going at it. And then the whole time I'm thinking like, "Oh my God, we just spent like $300 each on these seats. We're going to get thrown." She's like, "I'm calling security." Like, we don't get tossed into the game yet. So then Penn State, they stunk. They got beat like 47-3, but they stopped the first three plays. This is like Matt Leinart at USC. This is 10 years ago. So the first three plays, though, they stopped them on third down. And so I go, nothing, not just spectacles. So then Burr and this guy are arguing. And he's like, "I'm going to throw you on the field." And Burr's like, no, I don't think you are, man. I don't think you are. So it get to the point where then like everyone around us was on our side.
Right.
And then it all whatever fizzled out and everything went, and then that's it. But that is the Rose Bowl legend. Is you gotta lose 40 pounds to talk to me that way.
Oh, wow.
Like that's the Rose. That's when he's like, Bartnick's the Rose Bowl legend. So
that title came from that interaction.
Yes.
Okay.
Now Jason is a complete part of. He came in the second year. He didn't party with us, but he came over and did his baseball impressions. We're like, oh, we gotta all go together next year.
Yeah.
So Lawhead is a Rose Bowl legend, a legend of the Rose Bowl.
Right.
But the original.
Yeah, the phrase was coined from.
Yes. So
okay.
And I don't argue if he wants to whatever at any point, but that's the whole thing. I don't get upset when he wants to say, "Well, who's the real legend?" He can say it every once, but that's
where it came from. That's
that's the official.
Right. I like that. That's great. Thanks for sharing. I didn't know that.
We had so much fun. We gotta go every year.
Yeah.
And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then Lawhead brings Burr's $1,000 grill, and
that's what he said. Yeah, the game changer. I think he called it.
And we just go nuts, and we always have a blast, and it's a big deal.
That's awesome.
Well,
that's what he calls you every time he refers to you. Is the Rose Bowl legend?
Yeah.
Joe Bartnick.
Yeah.
So I was like, I gotta ask about that.
So
that's awesome. Now you'd mentioned earlier that you've written for television, so I was going to ask you, just from your experiences, what's the difference writing for TV versus writing stand-up? Is it a different monster?
Well, writing for television is actual work. I don't write my stand-up.
Right.
I work on my stand-up every day. Like, all I really have to do after this, because I did a couple things I had to do for other projects, was I just every day I listen, which is great for the kids, if anyone's still listening. If you want to get into stand-up or you're young and stand-up, my only two advices are get as much stage time as possible. Because if if you're beginning out, if you only get better by doing more than 3 sets a week. If you're doing less than 3 sets a week, you're not getting any better. You're getting worse. 3, you'll just maintain. You have to do more than 3. But and tape all your sets and listen. So today I have to go back and listen to my set. And that's all I really do. If something's funny comes up, I write it down on a piece of paper, put it in my notebook, put it in my thing. I have a notebook, but I either type it into my phone or write it down on a piece of paper, or like, I got to remember this.
Yeah.
And then I'll say it on stage. You saw how I work. I just kind of bullshit.
Yeah, but it was great. Like,
thank you. But I mean, I don't write per se. I'll listen like, okay, I want to say it this way. Then I'll write it down my notebook that way.
It's the same style for me. It's like workshopping it basically. So you're not writing, but you're going up with premises.
Or I may say, hey, isn't that, or like, hey, you know what happened to me today? I this, and then like see if maybe you get a kick out of it. Then maybe I should do it on stage, maybe. Or
yeah, absolutely.
I'm constantly writing, but I'm not sitting down there. I don't sit down. I'm going to write an hour today and sit down and write.
God, I can't do that.
I don't do that at all. But unless I'm writing either for a roast or writing a job. Yeah. For television or somebody or what. That's the only time I sit by a computer, right?
And is it nuts? Because a lot of guys get into stand-up and they're like, oh, I want to, write a movie or blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, a lot of people, from my experience and what I've seen, a lot of them treat stand-up like it's going to be a transitional thing to go into TV or.
Well, a lot of people, it is because there's only so many Elvises.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
There's only so many. I mean, I'm just falling into, it's all I want to do is stand-up because that's all I really want to do. So I'm kind of doing the faux hockey journalism route as my kind of backup plan or whatever. You've heard me talk about acting. I'm not a big actor. I'm not. So, but yeah, most people, it is a gateway to everything else. This is my gateway to doing hockey stuff or radio or whatever. It's a gateway for anything.
Right.
Stand up. Yeah.
And do you enjoy writing for television? Do you enjoy doing that stuff? I mean, I'm sure even when you're doing your top 100 lists and things like that. I mean, that's not off the top of your head. That's a written sort of homework task as well.
Yeah, I mean, anything stand-up is all for yourself. So that's totally different than doing anything for anybody else, right?
Right. No, that's true.
And podcast's all for myself.
Good. Well, and if you're passionate about it, it's not as much a labor of work as
right.
It is
Now is writing roasts funner than other things? Yes. Actually, writing for television and being in a writer's room is not it is fun, but it's actually a job.
Yeah. And it's got to be tough too because I know.
Now, is it better than all the other shit jobs I've had? Oh, absolutely. Maybe not as fun as bartending, but it's funner than 90% of jobs.
Yeah.
And it's not digging ditches, but it's
data entry in an office under fluorescence and stuff.
Yeah. But it's still work. It's still work.
Yeah, and I know from some of the guys that I've talked to that write for TV and stuff, like there's a certain amount of, if you're writing for like a sketch show or a news show, like you got to come in every day and it's 12 articles and you could be like 3-4 days straight where they never use anything that you're pitching.
Right.
And shit like that. Like like you said, in a big writer's room.
I've only worked on one variety show like that. And Fox was once a week. So,
was that the Dog After Midnight one?
Yeah. I think the way I would enjoy being a writer on television is I've never done a daily show. I've written for radio services where you write like 30 jokes a day, and if they pick them, they pay you, and if they don't, they don't.
Right.
But I've never done a daily thing for television. I think I would enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think my mind thinks jokes. I'm trying as a stand-up to transition into stories.
Okay.
And longer bits. Like some people write great sketches, don't do jokes.
Right. Yeah. No.
You
absolutely.
know what I mean? I'm a quicker guy. My expertise besides roasts and or jokes is punch up.
Yes.
Making things funnier.
Right.
But overall, big view picture, like I couldn't come up with season's work. I'm not trying to knock myself. I haven't. That's not my exercise.
Right.
Having a show, and maybe if it was my show or whatever, Joe Bartnick, the Joe Bartnick show, and I'm a dentist. I come up with who knows? Maybe I can get seasons out of that. But
right.
Just in general, like writing an episode of something is not something I really do.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me is it's like that staring at the blank canvas. It's like if I, like you said, it's like, hey, write a bunch of little jokes or whatever. That's something, that's some direction. It's like, oh, you're a dentist, write about that.
Right.
Like for me, it's just all I need sometimes is just a little bit of direction, and then I can sort of run with it. But to just be like, okay, write a show.
Right.
Like Well, I'm going to tell you right now, my anxiety is going to go through the roof. I cannot stare at that fucking blank canvas. No, that's cool, man. Now you've been here for a few weeks and you've obviously traveled all over Canada before. Mm-hmm. How do you like performing up here?
I think the Canadian audiences are great. Yeah, I love performing up here. I really do. I'm not just sucking up to because by the time most people hear this, they'll be like, "Oh, he was here last week."
Yeah, exactly. No, it's I always like to ask just to see the differences and stuff too, because I mean I know that there's different crowds in different areas that laugh at different things. People have told me several times, like I perform a lot in Ottawa, that's where I live, but this is the whole town's a government town. Everybody it's one of the highest. Wages and cost of living and things like that in the country because everybody works for the government. There's money for it, you know what I mean? But there's
no recessions because there's always the government, right?
Doesn't seem to be. I mean, there's government jobs that get cut all the time. You hear about that stuff. But generally speaking, in terms of the crowds, they tend to be more, I don't want to even call them uptight, it seems quickly, but they're definitely conservative with how they'll give out their laughter. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone's kind of worried that they don't want to laugh at the taboo stuff.
Well, like you saw like I didn't do any of my my racial jokes Tuesday, whatever the first night.
Yeah, Tuesdays when I was there.
Tuesday, yeah. And then last night I did my racial chunk, and I totally felt them, like some of the people, like the first night everyone was like after the show, oh my god, it was amazing. And then last night I think some of the people were like, and then because the one bartender chick was like, oh, I heard your racial stuff, and I'm like. Thinking like you work here, you should know that like these are, or she was like, oh, so you're a racist, like kind of kidding.
Oh, really?
And I'm just kind of like, I don't know, because it's always that stuff where you get more high fives, or like great job from the blacks in the crowd, because they think it's funny. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like pro them if you're smart enough to.
And it's
to catch if you go on buzzwords or whatever. Oh my God! Then you're never going to catch the funny.
Well, that's the two people are afraid to laugh.
And to be honest with you, that's like not the name drop, but that's like Burr loves the one joke in that racial chunk, and he's like, that's brilliant. And the sound guy at the Improv in Irvine's like, dude, that joke, and he names a part of the joke. He's like, that part is just brilliant. So it's like it's kind of like for someone who works there. I'm not trying to throw her under the bus. I'm kind of like you don't.
No, absolutely.
And I was a little big, so I didn't have a great defense.
You're not expecting.
I was just like, oh yeah, I don't know. People, I was just kind of like, I don't really defend my, you know what I mean? It was kind of like,
well, and that's why I say like the nature of the city is like sometimes people hear the word and shut down. They're not even listening to the context of.
Yeah, I don't use any buzzwords by any means. I don't use any slurs or anything. It's just
no.
It's just when you talk, there's whatever black people like
Well, and that's the nature. That's what I find sometimes is the nature of Ottawa is that because they're in these government environments and stuff like that. They're almost like, well, we can't like it's like if you do a show for like a big company, everyone knows each other.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. So people are always like, can I laugh at the sex jokes or the?
Oh yeah, well when you were talking before about how you feel weird about. That's when when you're like the life of the party, or when you have to be when you go to do a corporate event. And you're like, you're just here because these people don't know how to talk among themselves.
Yeah.
For like a half hour or whatever. It's kind of crazy. Well, I always find that rich people want to talk about minorities and poor people want to talk about sex. Like if you ever do like a country club or a private gig, like, like white collar rich people always want to hear like, whatever. Not race jokes, but
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I just go up and talk about sex. That's the way I was. No, but it's funny because like in Toronto, people are like, oh, the crowds are a little tight. Wait till you get to Ottawa. But I found that the Toronto crowds were totally easy.
Oh yeah,
I'd be totally like laughed at everything.
Well, yeah, they're less government, more diverse, more entertainment, more.
Yeah. Whereas last night was the first night I felt where it seemed like more people were holding back a little bit. But I thought last night was maybe my worst set of the run I've had the whole time. Yeah, I just felt like off. Still, knock on wood, a lot of people still thought it was great. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back.
No,
but
course.
You know yourself when it's like, it just didn't.
Yeah, I mean they can't all be fucking home runs.
Yeah, no, it was like if that's the only show you saw of me, you'd be like, oh, that was great.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Well, and that's what I say too. Like you had mentioned it earlier, is like sometimes after the show.
I don't mean to sound pompous. I hope I don't.
No, God, no. No, trust me. If you hear the shit I say normally, we're not pompous. We're not pompous. A lot of the listeners are just like, I just love learning more about these guys and the businesses and stuff, right? Right, listeners? Isn't that what you say? But like, there's times too, like you said, where like you can feel them going like, oh, but then they come up after the show like, great job. I've had a bunch of shows where I felt like I was dying a terrible death on stage, and they were quiet and responsive. And then after the show, they're like, that was great. And I didn't feel like they were. I go, well, then let us know. They're like, well, we know everybody, and we didn't want to be the only ones laughing. I go, yeah, but if everyone's thinking that. So you're all having fun. I have no, and I go that affects the show too.
Yeah, I think that's more of a Canadian trend. I think a lot more of the quiet. We enjoyed the show people in Canada. Yeah, like there's more of those. But
yeah, I'm just like, fucking laugh. I go, if you're having fun, laugh. When people cover their mouths in comedy, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? That's
because there was definitely some shows in Toronto, and I'm like, oh, that was good, and then it wasn't amazing, and then afterwards, everyone's like hugging you, so you're like, oh, okay,
This is another fucking weird thing of comedy. I do have some listener questions. That's the end of the questions I have for you. But like I said, we could shoot the shit, and we will be. Speaking of which, I will remind everyone that Joe Bartnick is performing at Absolute Comedy this weekend. So you're getting this on Friday. If you sat
through this for an hour, you should. Please come see me.
Yeah, come hear us be funny. But Joe's
my manifesto.
Joe's there all weekend, and on Saturday I will be featuring for him. That's what you guys call it in the States before the headliner, right? The 20-minute or whatever. That's the feature. Right. Yeah, because here we called it middling. We call it, I'm middling for like in the middle of the show.
It's literally the same thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I liked the feature name better. You know, hey, headliner this featuring so-and-so. Middling sounds like I'm like the Chinese finger trap in a porn movie. Do you know what I mean? It sounds like, you know, I'm the chick who's got the two guys. You know, I'm middling for Peter North and Ron Jeremy.
Well, I think featuring is what you say to civilians, and I think middling is what you say.
Like the industry term kind of thing.
Yeah, like if you're talking to me, I'm middling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, because that's the thing. I'm like, people would say that.
But you don't tell like
I'm middling, and you're like, what does that mean?
Decent looking chick. Oh, I'm middling. You say, hey, I'm the feature act. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm middling. So was I in these California movies. I was right in between them. Right, you go, I'm middling for Joe Bartnick and Evan Carter, and you're like, what are they doing? Anyways, so yeah, I'm there on Saturday, guys. If you want to see, your faithful host here. But yeah, I mean, go see Joe anytime you can this weekend. Like I said, you got a last opportunity on Monday night at the Tartan Pub in Orleans if you're way out in the middle of nowhere and have a difficult time getting into the city. I do have the only one person wrote in, but he wrote in a few different questions, and I would be interested to hear your results.
Only one person wrote in?
Only one person wrote in.
Oh, God.
But he wrote in.
Do I know him?
No. So what he
this guy, that bad? Does that mean I don't have a draw?
Yeah, in Ottawa. That means I don't have a fucking draw. No one was paying attention to me. So Jerry's got a few questions. One of his questions is racism prevalent in comedy industry?
What do you mean? Like white guys have less opportunities than black guys?
I don't really know, to be honest with you. I'm always telling you.
It's definitely turned in the sense where if you're a straight white guy, it's much harder because of the way the industry wants to have either chicks or gay dudes or any other color but white ahead of you on almost everything nowadays. But the cream rises to the top, and the white guys, straight white guys that are the most famous and the best, they're the best. You know, Burr, Attell, Louis C.K., Sebastian Maniscalco is great. There's like the guys that on top they're on top for a reason. So it's just about working harder. If that's what he means, that there is racism, that anti-racism or whatever, the anti-white male. Not to like bring out the violin. I think everything in life is turning that way right now anyway, against the white man, right?
I talked about that on an episode recently. I don't like my perception of it isn't so much like, the anti-white man, but it seems like nowadays we're striving for equality, and I'm all for that. I really am for like everyone deserves a fair shake.
Yeah.
We all have advantages and we all have disadvantages.
Right.
But I'm like, but now there's like, I basically attacked privileged when people are like, oh, you check your privilege and remember your privilege. I'm like, well, that sounds to me like instead of listening to my opinion and seeing if there's any merit on it based on what I said, you're telling me in advance that my opinion is privileged. Like you're basically slapping a label on it before you pay attention to it.
Right.
And I said, and the same thing with mansplaining. People are like, oh, he's mansplaining. If you say your position, I thought mansplaining was when you were just, you were being chauvinistic or something like that.
No, it's just talking.
But it was like, but basically it means condescending. It says whenever a man is talking down to a woman about a conversation or something. And again, I could be wrong in my definition. Someone came at me for my definitions, but the way I looked at it was, I was like, well, that's condescending. If you're talking down to someone, it's condescending. It's not a gender doing it to another gender. If you're being condescending, you're being condescending. You don't have to change it and make it now a gender-related thing.
I did the oldest radio station in Canada in Kingston. It was the university show. And they had like a list of like 9, 10, 12 hotlines for every microaggression in the world. Canada is, I think, way more that way.
We're more sensitive. We try to make everybody.
I mean, America's turning that way, but I think it's way more prevalent up here, as far as people. I mean, people in America too. People want to find, every this and that and the other thing. They want to find, racism, and they want to find this and that. If you're looking at anything, you can find what you want, but,
Well, my position was like, I want everyone to win, and I want to hear what everybody has to say.
Yeah.
So my big thing was, you know what? If we really are trying to strive for progress, finding new ways to start basically, if you tell me that my opinion means less because like I'm mansplaining to you because I have an opinion, I go, well, that's not progressive. That's basically going. Like when men told women that they didn't have a voice, that they didn't deserve to speak because they were inferior, that was wrong. You know what I mean? We were wrong to be like, you don't deserve to say something.
Everybody wants to be the victim. No one wants to rise above and not be victims.
Well, that's kind of how I feel.
Everybody wants to be the victim. Oh, everyone wants an excuse of why they're not where they're at.
And that's why.
And they want it legislated and made officially why they're not where they're at.
Well,
whereas whatever, like Obama's the president. Or was the president, black people can do whatever they want. I mean, there's racism out there. I'm sure there is.
Absolutely.
But everyone can do what they want. If Hillary wasn't such a C word, you would have had a woman president. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't racism or sexism or whatever, but
without question, like that stuff's out there. But
it's not the 1930s.
Well, it's like anything else. It's like anything else in life, and I agree with this. And I'll be honest with you. Like my position right now is that I know that I care about everybody. I love everybody. I want everyone to have a fair shake. So I feel comfortable saying it. But at the same time, I'm almost like anything I say, I feel like someone could jump down my throat for. But the truth of the matter is, anytime something happens to your life, these guys like Tony Robbins talk about this shit, is that we find reasons to blame something else, because if it's something else's fault, we don't have to anchor it ourselves and take it on. So the whole idea is, as long as everybody feels like somebody else is responsible for them not succeeding, whether that be in business or life or whatever it is, you can basically go, well, I don't have to do anything because it's not somebody else is doing it to me. So you take away the control from yourself. Now, I know that racism exists. Do you know what I mean? Like people, there are certain levels of privilege where you go, if I'm looking at a resume that says John Smith or Akbar Abdullahi, depending, there may be someone who goes, well, I'm judging based just on the name, and there's that sort of level of racism that can exist there. I know things like that exist, but I strongly believe, now of course, I'm a white guy, so maybe the world bends over backwards, but I'm overweight. I've grown up in poverty. Like I've had my own list of things. I have anxieties and stuff like that. I've got my own list of shit that holds me back too.
It's like the privilege is like, if I look decent, I can go take a dump in any metropolitan hotel. Like I could go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I can walk into the Sheraton in Wisconsin and then like go, just walk in, nod my head, and find the men's room and go.
Right.
If I'm a black guy or whatever, they may look at me or, sir, what are you doing here? There's a privilege to like, just whatever, not being walked around by a store or something. There's like there's some inherent privilege.
Absolutely.
But in kind of like in the real world, in the business, and I'm not in the business world. I don't know. I think things are. I'm so not the person to ask. I'm not in a business. I'm not in the real world. I'm not even in my own. Even my mind is always in a fantasy land.
Right.
But it just seems to me that like, I don't know. It just seems like.
My big thing that irks me is, like I said, is the whole idea that instead of talking to each other, instead of trying to find understanding, it sounds like we're all trying to, before we've even listened to the other person, we're trying to tell them why their opinion doesn't matter. And that's, and in terms of me, my trigger was like the whole, someone had written in and I was trying to actually expand my mind.
Yeah, I don't want to do my part of the joke, but that's kind of the part of my joke, which you'll see on the weekend. But like that's kind of like my thing is we're all together.
Yeah,
like that's kind of like the thing of the whole thing is like we're not really different.
No, we're not. And that's the thing
So-
is we put it like talk to each other. If we realize what our differences, don't go, hey, you're this, you're that, you're privileged, you're
Right.
cis.
Because
like, when we start putting ourselves in boxes,
because and that's the thing too is I don't even want to speak. I've spoken way too much on this already right now.
Yeah, sorry.
But that's the thing is like I don't. That's the thing. It's like it's not my thing.
Yeah.
So I can't speak to it. I'm a white man. I don't try to speak to it really. So, but in the same thing, it's like it's kind of like always in my face. When it's like I just kind of want to get along. Like I'm not going to rallies. I'm not,
Well, and I'm the same. I'm the same thing. I'm like I like talking to people. Like we talked right at the beginning. We talked about just if you have an interesting conversation, if you have something to say, it's cool to be engaged in it. But I mean, for me, I'm not rallying for anything. All I go is just I want to hear what you have to say. I don't need to tell you why it's not valuable. Tell me, and then I'll judge whether or not I'm interested.
Like in our business, like with we have to be on Facebook and Twitter. And just, I don't know if it's like this in Canada, but like all of just the people that want to put their political agendas or their social whatever agendas, it's just like,
it's like that. It's like that here. We have CNN too, and we have our Trump and Hillary supporters.
Just enough, but just the social causes and everything. It's really too much. It's just too much, man. People need a break.
Well, and that's what I say. I mean, really, at the end of the day, and I don't mean talk fucking politics all the time. I just mean the person who had written in, and I try not to give them too much airtime because
he has like 5 more questions we should make.
No, yeah, sorry, yeah. This is the answer. It's all Jerry's fault, by the way. I think just it was one of those things where they got mad at me because I was trying to go into the LGBT definitions. The acronym was getting longer, and I was trying to understand them, and they didn't like
There's already too many of them. Right? Either you're gay or you're not. Why do we have to like?
Well, there's a lot more of them, and here in Canada,
it looks like they're trying to win on the Wheel of Fortune.
I had made a joke. I had made a joke too, saying it's an acronym. Why is it longer than most words? But I was joking.
It is.
Do you know what I mean?
Like LGBT.
Well, here's the thing. That was the thing too. I looked at the government. The Canadian government has a different one than the American government. Different sections have, and different websites and different news media had different ones. So the idea was I did my best in a very short period of time trying to go, hey everyone, it's Pride Month. This and here's the acronym, which I didn't realize was this long. Here's what my research has meant or whatever. But the idea was the person who got upset with me was upset because
probably not even a gay person.
Who knows? But
but it's usually that's what gets me is the white do-gooders or the straight do-gooders,
the social justice warriors
that are like, it's not even your fight.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was like,
it's like, what do you let them be? It's like it's like whenever everyone wants to change the Washington Redskins name,
right?
And you find out that like 90% of the people that are Indians don't even give a shit.
Yeah, there's more. They've got a few other things that are a little more important to them.
Yeah, it's more like white people who are like, oh my God, this is terrible.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's that forever. As long as you're focused on what someone else is doing, you're not focused on yourself, and you need to be trying to improve yourself. Yeah. But anyways, long story short, is this person and I were not even at odds in terms of what the real issue was, which was to be open-minded, be trying to expand your mind. But I tried to learn. I said something that they didn't like in terms of, I got the definition wrong in their mind. And so as much as I'm trying to go, okay, well, here's what I've learned trying to go outside more and understand something that I don't understand about. I felt like they were like, not only should you not be talking about this because you're not part of the group, but you got to watch your jokes because you're a white male privileged. And I was like, are you not listening to anything I'm saying? I'm trying to broaden my horizons, and I feel like I said, I don't feel like I've gone out of my way to say anything outrageous or anything now, but there's that fear that like, holy fuck, I'm a good person. I'm not coming down on anybody. Why is it scary to talk about these things?
Well, listen to this. About a few months ago, I was in a town. I did a show, and I stopped by the local comedy club, and they're like, "Oh my God, yeah, we heard you were great. We want to start booking you here." Like, fantastic. Went out of the way, blah 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 blah. Get all the information, and the person in charge, and if it gets bad, whatever. But was a man dressed as a woman. Whatever you want to say.
Okay.
Not even doing a good job. Like just almost like Halloweenish, but totally, and had the female name and all this stuff. Totally played it off like no big deal. It's not a big deal, but didn't like say, hey, oh dude, yeah. Cut to like a week later, I call back to like look to get booked, and at the end I go, okay, like on the message, like, okay, thanks, man. Like, haven't heard back from him.
Right.
I meant absolutely no disrespect, but he's a dude. I don't know what the plumbing has changed, but I mean, I didn't mean to offend them. I don't care what they do.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just kind of one of those things like that person probably got sensitive. That's like, oh my God, you called me a man or whatever. It's like, but it's like, you are a man.
And that's why for me,
and don't be mad at me. Like, I'm not trying to be a dick. I just don't like, I'm almost 50. Like, I'm just going to call you a dude. Like, I call Bruce Jenner, Bruce Jenner. He's Bruce Jenner. I get the fact he's a woman now. He's still Bruce Jenner. I call Muhammad Ali because he's Muhammad Ali. I know some people call him Cassius Clay. He changed his name, but it's like he changed his. I don't know because when I knew him as Muhammad Ali, I wasn't old enough to know when he was Cassius Clay.
Right.
I wasn't old enough to call Lou Alcindor. I know him as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Right.
Like I know Prince is Prince. I know Prince is whatever that symbol. But you know what I mean though. It's like I call people what they are whenever. Like people in my family, like I have a big Italian family, like everyone has a nickname. Like he wants to be called Charles. Well, he's Butchie or whatever.
He's Butchie.
You know what I mean? It's like that's just the.
And I understand, and that's why, like I said, I mean, just wrapping it back up is just that it's. I want to learn. I'm open to the idea that things change. So I'm kind of like, okay, I want to know. But if you start asking questions and stuff, and people jump down your throat, I go, okay, well, it's not. If you want things to be more. At least this is my thought, and I could be wrong, but my thoughts are if you want people to learn, if you have something new that you want to learn people, make it a warm climate for them to come and learn in. Then you take one attempt and someone jumps down your throat, you're like, fuck, I'm not going anywhere near that again because it's scary.
These people have agendas. Like, I'm going to say these people, like Ross Perot, these people. But, did you, if you didn't hear this, we won't go over it, but did you hear about the whole thing with John McEnroe and Serena Williams? Did you catch any of that?
I think I'm sure it's well popular here. I don't know enough.
Well, there's a lady who's like, whatever on NPR, and she like was, in Baghdad for 30 years. So she interviews John McEnroe, and she's like, what do you think of Serena Williams? And he goes, oh, she's the best female tennis player ever.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, why would you say female? Some people would just say the best player ever. And he's all like, yeah, but if she played with the men, she would be like number 700. And then she's like, and it became the biggest uproar in the world. And it's like, and he said she's the greatest player of all time. And he even said she could beat some men some of the time. But if she played on the tour, that's where she would be. And people got all in an uproar. It's like, why can't they just admit the fact that she's a woman? It's nothing. You had some NPR chick like trying to poke him, and he was as nice as he could be about it. As opposed to just being like happy that he's talking about women's tennis and just like, oh, Serena's great. Oh yeah, she's great. Blah blah blah. Like that's it. She had to like these the social justice warriors are always looking just to like and poking people and getting people to react. And you go, ha ha ha, you're a racist or you're this or that. That doesn't bring people together.
Well, that's where my position is. It's like I just want to be. I think
you're not helping them. You say, oh, that's great, John. Do you think maybe she could beat a man one day? Well, I don't know, maybe. And he got into like he either say, well, he could beat some of them or whatever, like nice about it. But you know what I mean? As opposed to just being like, well, why would you wear it? It's like,
yeah, that's the thing. Like I said, it makes it tough. Like I want to have productive conversations. I want to learn. But at the same time, like, I don't want to be attacked. That's why I tell people all the time. I go, I before I start a podcast, I go, I'm going to ask you questions. I go, I'm not going to ambush you because that's not my intention ever. And I always ask, is there anything that, you don't want to talk about? And so far, I've not had a single guest who's like, nope, there's nothing off limits.
Well, I mean, I come from everything for funny. Yeah. Like, okay, the contest in Toronto. And this Islamic chick was really funny. And she did well. And she was like, ended in the top 5 or something. So when I go on stage to do my wrapping up set, I would always talk about the people I liked. Like this guy Chi and that and the other thing and Norm. And so I go, my first thing I said was, well, that terrorist chick was hilarious. And the place cracked up because they knew I came from a good place.
Yeah.
You could be offended if you're like, oh my God, I can't believe you called her a terrorist. It was a joke.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
Like that's the whole point. It's a joke.
Well, and that's the thing too. There's so many people who are going like, oh, it's a comedy club. They know you're kidding. I'm like, you'd be amazed how many people will go to a comedy club and get upset about it.
Yeah, because they still want it to fit into the little box of happiness.
Well, that's why I say, like, for me, at the end of the day, I want everybody to win. I try to treat everybody like
there racism in comedy.
Yeah. But roundabout way. Yes, no. It's like anything else. Yeah, the other questions I think are a little quicker, but he wanted to know, what are the chances of a guy with a strong accent make it big in comedy scene?
What kind of accent is it?
So I believe that now this is where I could be wrong because this would be me just guessing, but I believe it's like a strong, East Indian sort of Pakistani.
As long as they can figure out what you're saying,
Yeah,
you have an advantage because you're going to be funnier to listen to.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You're going to have a little bit of a hook there.
Well, it brings something unique to the table.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be you anyway, so it's a different part. But you have to be able to, unless you're going to do gigs in India, speaking Indian, people have to understand what you're saying. An example is Arthur
Simeon.
Yeah, hilarious comic. He has a little bit of an accent. You get used to it. You understand he's hilarious, but everyone understands what he's saying.
Absolutely,
He has an accent.
Yeah,
it's a thick Ugandan accent, but he gets the words out. You know what he's saying.
Absolutely, as long as you can articulate and enunciate what you're saying.
Yeah.
Now, because that goes with the second question, which is industry view the variety, brown, black, accent, etc., in comedy as an opportunity or a distraction? So you were saying
that's
that
an
it could be like
opportunity.
a hook or something.
It's
like
an opportunity. It's not a distraction at all.
And he says, now this was a great question to come in because we've been talking about it forever. His question is, how can you do stand-up without offending anyone? Which I would love to know the answer to that.
I try not to do that, so I'm the last person to ask. I think if everybody's there, victimless comedy is almost impossible.
Yeah, there has to be an exaggeration. There has to be a butt of the joke.
Yeah, I mean a lot of times I'm the butt of the joke. So there has to be something. I don't know.
No, I agree. I thought that question. I'm like, there's no answer. How can you do stand up without offending anyone?
Yeah,
it's not possible.
Well, but I think people are trying. I think people want that though. I think NPR wants to produce a comedy show where nobody's offended. I think there's forces that I think people want that. I think there's networks that want that to happen. But.
Well, it's the whole idea is that what offends you is different case by case.
I mean, like you're a big bone fella. You're one.
This is the first I'm hearing of this.
But you're one of the last. Like fat is one of the last, and now there's fat shaming. But like on network TV, like pretty much every show now, the only people you can really pick on are the fat white dad. Right? It's like he's a dumb guy. He's a lazy guy.
It's like the Honeymooners format, right? The fat, stupid husband.
But it's like that's kind of like the last guy on American network TV that you can actually that you can easily throw arrows at.
Right.
Everything else is almost kind of sacred,
Well, and that's
as opposed to the 70s and 80s where everybody was fair game, and 60s,
Yeah, you're not going to see an I Love Lucy for
You're not going to see All in the Family or the Jeffersons.
God, no, and that's the thing is if you see anything close to that now, you're like, what the?
Yeah, or Good Times or any of the great shows. Yeah.
No, and that's like I said, in terms of offending people, you don't even know what's going to get people's back up. You could write a joke about ramen noodles. And someone's dad choked to death on a fucking bed. And now that's offensive.
Or you hear like, oh my God, don't joke about cancer. My great uncle died of cancer. Like he's gonna die of something some way. So
you could talk about car accidents and someone's friend died in a car accident.
Yeah, no, I'm like, all that stuff. But
the idea is like, there's no way to find a subject that no one's going to offend because depending on what's going on, you know what I mean? Even somebody who was important to you just happened to work for that place or whatever. So it's not about the place, but they died recently and now that's upsetting. Like,
but getting back to the whole thing about the woman, he didn't understand my joke and stuff. That's usually when you're talking about them or whatever group you're talking about. If they have a sense of humor, they usually get the biggest kick out of it. Like you're talking about gay dudes, they love it. They come up, oh, you're hilarious. Or black chicks or whatever the case may be. Usually, if you make it about them and you're just not mean, it's funny. They usually love hearing them talked about.
He's just got 2 questions left. He goes, isn't comedy all about setting your limits and cross it deliberately with the audience? And I think we've addressed that somewhat. I think he's saying that like basically find the line and then step over it. Is that not what comedy's all about?
I don't know if that's what it's about. I think it's about being funny.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't cross any lines and they're hilarious. That's a lot. Some of my humor is maybe a little over the line, but I think a lot of people's aren't.
Yeah, so like
I can't say that that's what it's about. Like Brian Regan isn't about crossing over lines.
God no.
Jim Gaffigan isn't about crossing over lines. So I don't think that's what comedy's
Pete
all about.
Pete
But
Holmes.
he sounds like a guy that has an agenda that wants to, which there's a lot of those now. The comedy's in a boom. There's a lot of those guys too. Well, they want to get their political or whatever their point of view out there. And if it's not funny, it's not going to be funny.
Right. You sort of just
whether you have an accent or whatever lines you're crossing, You got to make it funny.
Yeah. That's really, I mean, it's a lot of guys want to make it more complicated than that. I just say, listen to the audience. If they're laughing, then you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
If they're not laughing, then you need to figure out why they're not laughing.
Yeah. That's why you listen to your tape.
Exactly. And then, of course, his last question is, how do you judge someone in comedy if they're good or bad?
I've seen enough comedy. I can tell if somebody's good whether the crowd likes them or not. Now, there's some people I know are good. That it's not my cup of tea.
Right.
You know?
And I respect. I've got the same.
But I have most people that like my wife has seen a million comics too, and she's not a comic. She has much less of a easier splash. Like she'll be like, this guy sucks or that one's terrible. I'll be way more people that benefit of the doubt because they're doing it. But
right.
You know.
But you get an idea of it. Yeah, like I said, I mean, some of the questions are kind of like, well, you know, I mean, they're very broad. So not to attack or judge, but it's kind of like, how do you do comedy without offending someone? How can you tell if someone's good or not? You know, aren't you supposed to step over the line? It's
I feel like I'm on like some freshman's radio station at college.
Well, like I said, I mean, I tell my listeners if they want to write in questions, I will ask them.
I'm sure, tape all your sets, dude. And cross any line you want, and don't worry about your accent. That'd be my advice to you.
Yeah, and if someone's good, how do you know they're good? The crowd's laughing, whatever. Like I there's guys who are not my cup of tea.
No,
like
there's guys that are
you
terrible.
See that they
the
work.
Crowd laughs though.
Yeah,
there's guys that are terrible that the crowd. Usually the crowd loves the terrible people.
Well, that's it for the questions and everything. So this is up to you, man. I've got something from my partners at Portable Press from the bathroom readers of the Shoots and Scores one. Did you want me to read this with you, or do you want me to add it on as an after fact?
I kind of want to hear the story, but I'm kind of done podcasting.
Yeah.
Did that make any sense? Like, I'm kind of tired.
Hey, guys. So this is an insert after the fact. I'm recording this after the interview. Basically, what happened is I did read the article with Joe, but I think that, we had a 2-hour-long podcast almost, and we did get kind of tired. So Joe was actually sort of just sitting there while I read this 4-page article. And because I could see sort of, the fact that he was just sitting there, I sort of raced through it, and I really didn't give this article, quite the credit that it deserved. So I figured best thing to do was I'm going to take another stab at it now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it calmly. I don't have someone sitting across the table patiently waiting for me to finish this article. I do find it interesting. I read it earlier in the day before the podcast, and I enjoyed it. But like I said, when there's someone sitting across the table, you kind of feel like you're holding them hostage while you sit here and read a book at them. So yeah, I just, for everyone who's tuned in because they're fans of Joe Bartnick's Puck Off podcast and kind of want to hear the interview with them, and the hockey fans in general, I figured a perfect opportunity to share this article with you guys. So I'm going to read it for you now in its entirety with a proper pacing and giving it the credit it's deserved. So as usual, my partners at portablepress.com have provided this wonderful book, which is the Uncle John's Bathroom Reader Shoots and Scores. So the article I picked out today is called Where It All Began, and it says, hockey's longest running and often most heated argument concerns the site of the game's origins. So one of the liveliest hockey battles, as energetic as the scrappiest of scraps for the puck in any NHL rink corner, is waged by the game's historians. The contentious subject of debate is where and when the primitive forms of this wonderful game actually originated. So let there be ice is the first section. Combine ice, a frozen pond or river, and narrow steel blades attached to one's feet, and you will find that quick movement over the slippery surface becomes possible. Throw in sticks and something to hit while moving on the ice, a ball, a wooden disc, frozen horse manure, and a game is born. While there are reports of stones being kicked or hit back and forth with sticks after the Norman invasion of Britain in the 11th century, and while Chinese and Russian folklore document stick and ball games on ice 500 years ago, the earliest form of what really became ice hockey was most likely played in the Canadian province of Nova Scotia, and probably in the town of Windsor. So next section, early hurly-burly. That Windsor would become among hockey's earliest sites shouldn't come as a surprise. It can get very cold there, but also Windsor was one of Canada's first towns, settled in 1684 and the location of the country's first college. Anglican church members working in the New World as executives of steamship, lumber, and fur trading companies did not want to send their children all the way back to England for a decent education. So instead, they imported British professors to form King's College School. and the professors brought their games with them: cricket, rounders, the forerunner of baseball, and Irish hurley, a form of field hockey, were field games that were modified for the snow and ice of the Canadian winter. Mention of ice hurley around 1800 is the first written reference to a stick and ball game on a frozen surface. Next section, Colonel Hockey. One story claims that a Colonel Hockey, a common English name at the time, had British troops based at Windsor play the game for winter exercise, and hockey's game became simply hockey. A ball struck in hurley was said to be pucked, and the first wooden disc used in the game became known as simply the puck. Next section, Other claims to the game. For many decades, the original site for hockey was thought to be Kingston, Ontario, because the first written report of the game was published there in 1855. Soldiers at the British garrison, wearing primitive skates clamped to their shoes, and used field hockey sticks and a lacrosse ball to play in a large area of Kingston Harbor cleared of snow. In 1903, a Kingston newspaper brashly declared the town the birthplace of hockey. In 1941, an elderly Montreal resident recounted stories from his father about a primitive game of hockey in that city in 1837. In the 1870s, a group of students at McGill University in Montreal invented a game played on ice using a combination of rules from field hockey, lacrosse, and rugby. A definitive 7 paragraphs in the 1877 Montreal Gazette recorded the first set of printed rules for hockey as devised by these clever students. The next section, Whoopin' It Up in Windsor. Although extensive research has provided evidence of the game in Nova Scotia from 1800 on, historians have been unable to agree on a precise locale and date. The area had long winters, abundant ice, many students and soldiers with plenty of time on their hands, and keen sporting spirits in quest of diversion from the cold season. The much-quoted author Thomas Chandler Halliburton was born in Windsor and attended King's College. He had arts and law degrees and became a distinguished judge and writer, often called the father of American humor. A paragraph in an article Halliburton wrote for a British magazine in 1844 about his days as a student at King's College has caught the eye of many a hockey historian. The boys let out racin', yellin', hollerin', and whoopin' like mad with pleasure, and the playground and the game at Bass in the Fields, or hurley on the long pond on the ice, or campin' out at night at Chester Lakes to fish. Halliburton had graduated from King's in 1810, and his mention of hurley, the early name for hockey, indicates the game was played before that year. Newspaper stories were discovered that discussed hurley on Long Pond at Windsor before 1816. Next section, From Ironwood to Sherwood. Windsor was enjoyed as a resort by wealthy residents of Halifax, some of whom owned luxurious estates in the town. They would come to fish, hunt, and race horses on the horse track and on ice, and to attend cultural events at the college. Thus, word of the most exciting game on ice was spread across the province, and soldiers based in the Halifax-Dartmouth area also started to play. As the game grew, a loose set of rules was established, a sort of sporting code rather than a written rule book, to govern how the game was conducted. The Micmac natives of Nova Scotia, who had a field and ice game of their own, supplied the first pucks. Slices of black cherry wood with tight, dark bark, making it easier to find in the snow. They also carved strong one-piece hockey sticks from ironwood trees with roots still attached. The root used for the blade, the stem carved into the handle. Next section, the first road trip. When the Army moved west to Montreal and Kingston, the game went with them. An 1846 entry in a diary belonging to the father of a Kingston historian reads, "Most of the boys were quite at home on their skates. They could cut the figure eight, but shinny was their delight." The word shinny had come from the Scotch stick and ball field game of shinty and is used today to describe a loosely structured game of pickup hockey. A British Army officer wrote in his diary in 1843, in quotes, "began to skate this year, improved quickly, and had fun at hockey on ice," end quote. Supporters of Kingston as the game's birthplace used these lines to back their contentions. Next section, bullies provide order. One major development in hockey's growth from a mad scramble sport with as many players as the size of the available ice surface would hold to a more organized game was the publication of the famous Gazette rules. Those 7 paragraphs printed in the Montreal newspaper on February 27, 1877, supplied a basis for the game that exists to this day. defining offsides, fouls against opponents, and how players were to resume after the ball or puck went off the ice. A face-off in those rules was called a bully. The rules slowly expanded over the years, the number of players on the ice for one team being reduced from 15 to 7. Last section. Shall we take this inside? By 1880, several cities in Canada had indoor arenas, built first for pleasure skating with no hockey allowed. Gradually, the game moved indoors, the lacrosse ball bouncing out of place so often that some enterprising soul sliced it to produce a flat piece of rubber that would slide on the ice. As shooting skills improved, various pieces of primitive equipment were introduced to protect shins. Goalies wore padding, and skates evolved from the blades that were strapped to the boots to skate boots, with blades permanently attached. But going all the way back to the chilly outdoor days, there is no doubt hockey is a very competitive sport, both on the ice and in the minds of many professionals and amateur historians. And finally, just a little subsection that they have on the last page here is called double vision. During a 1978 playoff game, New York Rangers goalie John Davidson was hit in the mask with a slap shot. Announcers Jim Gordon and Bill Chadwick noted that Davidson must have double vision after such a blow. Members of the American rock band Foreigner happened to be watching the game and thought double vision would be a good name for a song. The subsequent song became the title track of their next album. The hockey game-inspired Double Vision went on to sell 14 million copies. So that was the history lesson on hockey, guys. Where it all began is the name of the article from Uncle John's Bathroom Reader, Shoots and Scores. Available for your hockey fan. It's a great book that has tons of information in it. Lots of great articles. And again, in the future, you guys will get pieces of here and there. But if you can't wait for more of them, go out and pick them up at portablepress.com. My partners there. So again, I've added this article after the fact to give it its proper, cadence and respect, and just so that you guys can actually enjoy it rather than my speed read version, which I got to tell you guys is just almost impossible to read. There's no periods in it or anything like that. So, I wanted to add it in after the fact. So thank you guys for bearing with that little edit. I don't typically ever edit anything into the podcast, but I figured it's not like I said something and then took it out. I basically just reread it, but in a better way. So I am going to go back to my just saying farewell to Joe, and of course the outro music from Monkey Junk, as always, phenomenal Canadian blues band. Feel free to check them out. I haven't given them a little shout out in a while, but the title track "Show Me Yours" by Monkey Junk. Always happy to have them. So again, I'm going to throw it back to the earlier recording. Thank you guys so much for enduring this edit, and I hope you enjoyed. I really want to thank you for sitting and chatting with me, Joe. I really appreciate that, buddy. I look forward to seeing the full sets this weekend and working with you.
Yeah, it'll be fun, man.
Yeah, buddy. And the podcast is I'll post it tomorrow, but for you guys listening, it is Friday when this comes out, and we will chat with you soon. So thank you so much for listening to yet another bonus episode of the One Man Podcast, guys. We will talk with you next time. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you.